Some people say that Mario Party is a game of skill. And they'd be wrong. Sure, there are mini games for coins and the occasional moment of strategy, but in the end, there's nothing you can do to stop yourself from getting chance-timed into oblivion. Skill is an illusion. Real gamers know that Mario Party is a game of chance. And they're also wrong. Because where there's chance, there are statistics. Where there are statistics, there are trends. And where there are trends, there lies a path to victory. Mario Party is a game of math. And if you couldn't tell, I'm a pretty big math guy, and these games have always fascinated me. Which is probably why I've made so many videos about them. So today, I decided to compile every single video I've ever made about the statistics and board design of Mario Party into one big, bingeable, feature-length film. Look, it's Christmas. I took a little bit of time off. And so, I think it's about time that we roll some dice. This is an S-tier Mario Party character, but only in 20-turn games. Now that feels like a sentence that should never be said. I mean, Mario Party is basically just the world's most inefficient random number generator. There shouldn't be any talk of character tier lists, let alone ones that change depending on the game's length. And for most Mario Party games, that's true. The character you pick has no influence on the actual game. But in 2018, Nintendo decided to take their perfect formula for a chaotic Mario Party game and, make it work not so good anymore. In the game Super Mario Party, each character gets their own special die with a different distribution of numbers. And if you thought these extra dice would be fair and balanced, guess again. And if you are already familiar with the disparity in Super Mario Party's extra dice, believe me, it's even worse than you think. This is a full statistical analysis of Super Mario Party's dice. Richard, hit that intro. This video was voted on by all my supporters on Patreon. If you want to help ensure that I can keep making videos like this for years to come, you can also get access to all sorts of cool perks like early access to every single video and exclusive bi-monthly live streams where I do all sorts of fun stuff. We did an entire playthrough of the super hard and chaotic Pokemon Emerald Redux randomized. We did crowd control of Mario Party where you got to literally play God. And later this week, I'm finally revealing the full lore behind the unfinished Editor Richard ARG that I did on this channel. So, if you're in a position to support and that sounds like fun, check the link in the description down below. Alright, now let's do an unreasonable amount of math about a game that's 99% luck. Now, I'm not the first person to try and find the statistically best character in Super Mario Party. It turns out that finding the expected value of each die is pretty simple. All you have to do is add up all the faces on each die together and then divide it by the total number of faces, in this case, 6. So if you did this with a normal die, you'd do 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 divided by 6 to find that the expected value for just a regular old standard die is 3.5. And you can do the same thing with every die in the game to find that Bowser has the highest expected value of 4.67. This means that given an infinite number of turns, you can expect to move 4.67 spaces a turn. But therein lies the problem. In Mario Party, you don't have an infinite number of turns. In Super Mario Party, games can be 10, 15, or 20 turns long. So, in a 10-turn game, there's a very real chance that Bowser rolls terribly most of the time. So, how do we account for this? Well, if we wanted to be perfectly accurate, we could try to find every single possible combination of rolls for each character for a 10, 15, and 20 turn game to see how often each character actually pops off. But running some quick math, that's a total of 69 quadrillion combinations that I'd have to find, which is a lot of work. So instead of doing that, I took the far simpler route of
simulating 570,000 games of Mario Party.
I promise this is easier. If we just write up some code that rolls a die with a given set of face values 10 times and adds them all together for a final result, we can simulate an entire game of Mario Party in an instant. Simulating one game isn't very helpful though. We could easily get an outlier that makes certain characters seem way better than they actually are. So, to make sure that we have a representative sample, let's simulate this game of Mario Party 10,000 times and find the average number of spaces moved. If we then do that for every single character, and again for 15 and 20 turn games, we should have all the information we need to definitively say which die is the best. However, before we can do that, we need to make some assumptions. First, we're going to assume that our goal is to move as far as possible. Generally speaking, the goal of Mario Party is to reach the star before your opponent does. So it stands to reason that a die that rolls higher will be better. True, there are certain circumstances where you might want to roll low. You might be close to the star but don't have enough money, for instance. But those cases are pretty rare. I don't know. Maybe just keep a golden block on hand if you're that worried. Second, there are certain die with coin faces. If you roll one of these, you don't move any spaces, but you do gain or lose that many coins. For the sake of this simulation, we're just going to call all of these 0 because you're not moving. But don't worry, we'll come back to these coins at the end. And lastly, something I haven't mentioned yet is that while each character has access to a special die, they don't have to use it. On any given turn, you can always opt to roll a regular 6-sided die instead. So instead of simply finding the raw spaces moved, I've set up the simulation to calculate the percentage of times that each character's die outperformed the standard die. The higher the percentage, the better the die is. And if a die has a percentage less than 50%, that means that more often than not, you're better off not even bothering. So, now all we need to do is simulate 30,000 games of Mario Party for all 19 dice for a total of 570,000 games. And it all took, literally a couple of seconds. Computers are wild, man. If we simply output the data into a spreadsheet, we can start making some comparisons. Let's start by looking at the 10-turn games. Unsurprisingly, the best character in the game is still Bowser. And it's not even close. When you've got 8, 9, and 10 on your die, it doesn't really matter what the rest of it is. In a 10-turn game, Bowser's die will outperform a standard die 76.89% of the time, more than any other character in the game. Tied for second is Wario, beating a regular die 66.67% of the time, and Boo 65.76% of the time. And rounding off the top 3 is the iconic and beloved Mario character, the straight up standard die. Which, yes, means that of the 18 unique dice available in this game, 15 of them are straight up worse than a regular old die. On one hand, that's actually not a terrible thing. You can technically pick any character you want and still be an A tier if you just never use their special die. But also, why even give them the special die then? You could have just given us, one more board maybe? For those curious about the trash tier characters, if we scroll to the bottom, we find that Goomba is the third worst, beating a standard die 27.82% of the time, followed by Rosalina at 24.08%, and rounding off the list in a distant last place is Hammer Bro, who outpaced a standard die an abysmal 5.27% of the time. I would say I hope none of you are thinking of trying to win with your favorite character, but let's be honest, nobody likes Hammer Bro. These are the tier list rankings for a 10-turn game, but that's only a third of the story. Going in, I wasn't really sure how much turn order would affect the rankings, and it turns out that for most characters, not that much. Higher win rates tended to grow as the turn rate increased, while lower win rate characters tended to do worse. And this makes sense. The more turns you add, the less likely you are to get extreme outliers. However, there were some characters that did see significant changes to their overall rankings in the tier list. Yoshi and Monty Mole tended to do a bit worse proportional to other characters in longer games. Yoshi specifically ranked 6th in a 10-turn game, but dropped all the way to 10th in a 20-turn game. And on the other hand, Luigi and Peach tended to do much better in longer games. Luigi ranks 14th in a 10-turn game, but jumps all the way up to 7th in a 20-turn game. I guess you just gotta give him a little bit more time to successfully do absolutely nothing. That being said, while there was some movement amongst the mid-tier characters, the top 5 remained exactly the same, regardless of turn length. If anything, our top 3 became more and more dominant as the games got longer. And the bottom tier also stayed the same, with nobody's favorite Hammer Bro dropping to just a 1.29% chance of beating a regular die in a 20-turn game. Let that sink in. In a 20-turn game, the odds of Hammer Bro moving farther than someone rolling a regular die is literally 1 in 100. But on the very off chance that there's some alien watching this video with completely foreign brain functions that leads them to absolutely loving Hammer Bro, don't worry, there's still a chance. We still need to talk about coins. Sure, Bowser might be absolutely schmovin', but you also have a 1 in 3 chance of not moving anywhere and losing 3 coins. And seeing as the goal of Mario Party is to buy stars, sure, you might get there no problem, but it doesn't actually matter if you're flat broke. So how do we account for this? Well, the first thing we need to do is figure out how many coins you can expect to gain or lose in a given game. To do that, we can take another expected value, but instead of spaces, we're going to keep track of how many coins you gain or lose from your dice in a given turn. If we then multiply that by the number of turns in a game, we can find out how many coins you can expect to gain or lose over the course of a whole game. And doing so reveals an entirely different story from the movement simulation. Before, Bowser was the undisputed king. But when you're losing an average of 20 coins in a 20-turn game, that's potentially an entire star you're missing out on. That is not insignificant. So now the question becomes, how do we combine the results from the movement simulation with the coin values to find the true best character in Super Mario Party? Well, to do that, we're gonna have to bust out an old favorite. That's right, I'm sneaking another Decision Matrix video in the last 5 minutes. Basically, what we need to do is standardize all of our data up to this point so it's on a scale from 1 to 10. Since all the movement was in percentages, that's pretty simple. We can just move the decimal point over a few spaces. And as for coins, since we've got some in the negatives and some positives, then we can simply shift our scale so it starts at 0 and use the highest value divided by 10 to scale everything down proportionally. And then finally, we need to choose our weights. This is a percentage that measures how important each criteria is. This case is pretty simple because we only have 2 criteria: spaces moved and coins gained. Since this game gives you plenty of opportunities to gain coins in mini-games and the abundant blue spaces, I'm going to say that moving a lot of spaces is more important than gaining coins, and weighs spaces moved at 70% and coins at just 30%. If you get to the star and don't have enough money, all I can say is skill issue. If you disagree with those weights, I have good news. I've included a link to the spreadsheet with all this data, as well as some fun graphs, in the description down below. If you just scroll on over to the end, you can change the weight for the spaces moved here. The weight for the coins will automatically update, and the sheet will recalculate everything for you. A higher weight means it's more important, going all the way up to 1 if you're a true Mario Party gamer who doesn't need these pity coins. I see you. But using my weights, what do we find? Well, for all you hammer broniacs out there, I have some terrible news. He still sucks. His literal only saving grace is a chance to get 3 coins. And even then, there are 3 characters that can easily make more money than him. But when you do factor in coins, you'll find that there's a lot more movement than we first thought. Donkey Kong, Yoshi, Goomba, and Shy Guy are all here for a good time, not a long time. And once again, we find that Luigi has the largest jump in performance as the turn order gets longer. What can I say? The man's got stamina. And perhaps most shocking of all, while Bowser remains the undisputed king for 20-turn games, if you're not an absolute masochist and don't want to spend 2 hours of your life wanting to murder your friends, then King Koopa has actually been dethroned. In 10 and 15-turn games, it turns out that the true best character is none other than Donkey Kong. Sure, he may not move as far as the rest, but he also has the potential to make absolute bank, significantly more than any other character in the game. Even this guy. If you're the type of person who values movement a bit more than coins, then you may want to opt for Diddy Kong. You can move about the same as a regular die while still making some good extra cash. And there you have it. Not only have we found the most accurate tier list of Mario Party to date, but we've also statistically proven that this game is fundamentally broken. Luigi can go all night long, and nobody, not even Nintendo, likes Hammer Bro. You dumb son of a bitch. I don't actually know what to do with this thing. Hello everyone. I wanted to take some time today to address the controversy that you've probably heard about. In my most recent video, I made some statements that, in hindsight, were not only inaccurate, but also hurtful, slanderous, and quite frankly, unforgivable. I like to think that I hold myself to a higher standard than that, and would like to take the time to issue a formal apology and show that we here at the Chiptide do not tolerate such blatant misinformation. In my most recent video entitled The Absurdly Broken Math of Mario Party, I stated that Hammer Bro had the statistically worst die in the game. This claim was supported by a statistical simulation, which said that Hammer Bro had only a 1.29% chance to outperform a standard die in a 20-turn game. And I used this information to attack any Hammer Bro fans, the Hammer Broniacs as they were dubbed, and insult their character choice and by proxy, their moral character. However, after reviewing the simulation, I have discovered that there was an error in the data. When entering the face values for each character's die, I said that Hammer Bro had a 0, 3 1s, and 2 5s. However, this is false. In reality, he has 1 0, 2 2 1s, and 3 5s. In my ignorance and carelessness, I have spread shameless lies about Hammer Bro and his performance in this game. So, in an effort to correct my mistakes, I reran the simulation with Hammer Bro's correct die values and obtained a new, more accurate win percentage. And after seeing this new data, I would like to take the time to formally apologize to all the Hammer Broniacs out there. I would like to apologize. Except I was right! Hammer Bro still sucks! He's still the worst in the game! Yeah, okay, maybe not by as wide of a margin, but he's still trash, yo! And you're trash if you like him! No, I mean, no, it's not that serious. It's a game of you roll some dice and add the numbers. It's not that serious. And also, Daisy might not be as bad as first thought. Part 2's coming in the next few weeks or so. Woo! 2 weeks ago, I made a short little video where I attempted to find the statistically best character in the game Super Mario Party. It was a lot of fun to make, and you all seemed to really like it. But I did make one pretty glaring mistake. No, it wasn't an error with the math or the simulation or even when I accidentally bashed Hammer Bro's kneecaps in. No, rather, I mistakenly assumed that you weren't real gamers. I thought I could get away with cutting a few corners. I thought I could oversimplify the simulation so I didn't have to write a million lines of code. I thought I could turn it into a fun little learning exercise about the power of expected values and nobody would notice. But I see now that you are a higher caliber of viewer. You demand a higher level of accuracy in your simulations of inconsequential party games. You demand full statistical rigor for your tier list constructions. And you're apparently a huge fan of Daisy.
Neato!
Last time, I defined the best character in Mario Party as generally the one who could move the most spaces. After all, if you can move further in a turn, you're more likely to reach a star, which is the whole point of the game. And that revealed that characters with high expected die values like Bowser, Boo, and Wario tended to perform much better than characters with lower values like Daisy and Hammer Bro, who were the worst. However, as many of you argued, this method ignored one key factor: consistency. A character like Daisy might be the literal definition of mid, but she is reliably mid. Sure, her special die may not move very far, but if you're in a situation where you're only 2 spaces away from a star, she's guaranteed to get you there. In this same situation, Bowser only has a 50-50 shot of getting that star. Sure, most of the time Daisy's die isn't all that helpful. It's more of a tool, only to be used in the right circumstances to guarantee success. And in a game that's almost entirely pure luck, one guarantee can be a very powerful thing. So, was I wrong? Did Daisy get snubbed? There's only one way to find out. This is another full statistical analysis of Super Mario Party. Richard, hit that intro. For those who haven't seen the last episode, you probably should to understand all the changes we're making this time, but in essence, last time I wrote a program that would simulate a few 100,000 games of Mario Party by basically rolling each character's special die a set number of times and recording the total number of spaces they moved and the number of coins they gained or lost. While it was able to give us some useful data on character averages and movement capabilities, it didn't account for the actual board state at all. In reality, it wasn't really simulating a game of Mario Party, it was more simulating a riveting game of rolling numbers and adding them together. Whoa! So, let's fix it. The first thing you need in a game of Mario Party is players. I'm not going to do another full simulation for every character and player combination. That would take way too long. So instead, we're going to take 4 key players, throw them into the great crucible of battle, and force them to duke it out in a few thousand games of Mario Party to see who reigns supreme. 4 will enter, only 1 will leave. So let's meet those 4 lucky players. For this experiment, since we're primarily interested in seeing how important consistency is, obviously Daisy's gonna be our first player. Her die features 4 3s and 2 4s for an average value of 3.33, slightly lower than that of a regular 6-sided die. If you want to go at least 3 spaces to nab a star, Daisy's guaranteed to get you there, and she also has a 2/3 chance of rolling exactly a 3, which can be pretty helpful if you want to land on a specific space. The next combatant is Shy Guy, who offers a different kind of consistency than Daisy. Instead of guaranteeing that you move at least a certain number of spaces, Shy Guy specializes in landing on exactly 1 space. He's got 1 0 and all the rest are 4s. So if you happen to be 4 spaces away from a really good space, Shy Guy will either land you on that exact space or not move you anywhere and give you another chance next time. Third, let's throw in Bowser, the character who's able to move the most, but very inconsistently. This will help us determine how important consistency is compared to raw movement. And finally, for our 4th player, I'm proud to present the newest addition to the Mario Party cast, Steve. He's the guy who didn't realize you could swap your dice and has just been rolling the regular one this whole time. He's just the control group. You kind of need one for a good science experiment. I'll be honest. This guy's gonna get slaughtered. So, now that we have our players, it's time for the hard part. How are we gonna simulate an entire game of Mario Party with just some basic code in a timely manner? Well, the simple answer is, we're not! Trying to account for every single feature and little complexity in this game would probably make my computer explode if my brain hasn't already from trying to figure out how to code all that. Instead, we're going to simulate a very simplified version of the game that keeps the core mechanics intact. First of all, we're ignoring coins completely. They're annoying to track. Stars are only 10 coins in this game, and they throw coins at you even if you lose a minigame. If you can't manage to scrounge up 10 by the time you reach a star, I'll be honest, it doesn't really matter who you pick. You're a lost cause. We're also not including shops or items, since they benefit everyone equally and wouldn't affect the end result anyway. Players will be moving around a simplified board that's 32 spaces long, about the same length as Whomp's Ruins without any of the branching paths. At the start of the game, one of these spaces will be replaced by a star, and just like in the game, whenever someone reaches the star, they'll get a point, and the star will move to a new space. Since we aren't using coins, we don't have to worry about distinguishing between red and blue spaces. But there is one more mechanic unique to this game that I do want to try to include. Allies. If you land on a specific space, you can gain a random ally from the unchosen characters. Once you have an ally, their special die is added to your pool of possible dice. And whenever you roll, your ally gets to roll a little bonus die that's either 1 or 2. You can have up to 4 allies in a game, which means that you can theoretically get a +8 to any roll you make. Pretty significant. At the start of each game, we'll select a random space on the board to be an ally space. Whenever a character lands on it, they'll get a random ally from the unselected characters and all the benefits that go along with them. So, that's the whole board setup. Now it's time for the hard part. We need to define the character AI. I know I said the last part was the hard part, but this one's actually way, way worse. Because Daisy and Shy Guy's dice are only useful in certain circumstances, we need a way to define what those circumstances are and when they should use them. We also have multiple things that characters might want to accomplish. Stars get you points that ultimately determine who wins the game, so obviously they're very important. But trying to target an ally space gives you a passive bonus for the rest of the game, which could help you to get even more stars in the future. So here's what I've set up for this simulation. During the first half of the game, the player's first priority will be to land on an ally space. The program will look at each die at their disposal, calculate which one has the highest chance of landing on the ally space, accounting for any bonus from allies they already have, and then roll that die and move that many spaces. If there's no ally space within range for them, their second priority is to reach a star, choosing the die that gives them the best chance of reaching or passing the space with the star. If they can do neither, they'll just roll the die that gives them the best chance of moving as far as possible. In the second half of the game, these priorities will switch. They'll first prioritize stars and then getting more allies. The earlier you get an ally, the more turns you have to benefit from their added effect. But if you go out of your way to get one in the last 2 turns, it might not actually have a chance to actually affect anything, and you would have been better off just trying to get another star. At the start of each game, a random turn order will be selected, the star and ally space will randomly generate, and then players will take turns rolling dice according to their current priorities. The program will track how many stars each player was able to obtain, how many allies they got and who those allies were, and how many total spaces they moved over the course of the game, to give us some data to analyze at the end. To get a good sample size that won't take several solar lifetimes to calculate, I've simulated 1,000 10-turn games, 1,000 15-turn games, and 1,000 20-turn games. I then compiled all that data into a spreadsheet, which you can find in the description down below. The only thing left is for the battle to begin. There's not actually any graphics or anything for this simulation. I don't know why I said that like you were about to see something sick happen. So, after all that, what's the answer? Is consistency the secret key to victory? Did I do Daisy dirty in my initial tier list? Is Shy Guy the secret dark horse of Super Mario Party? No. No, they're not that good. Across all 3,000 games, our basic boy Steve won 20.93% of the time, Daisy won 22.27% of the time, Shy Guy won 23.17%, and Bowser still reigned supreme at a win rate of 33.63%. Dividing the data up based on game length, we see that there's not any significant change to these values or rankings in longer or shorter games. No matter how you slice it, Big Bow is the way to go. Unless you slice it to factor in coins. So, what happened to the power of consistency? Why does the character with a 50% chance to do literally nothing dominate so much? I mean, he's not even Luigi. Well, I think the reason is twofold. First, while consistency can be beneficial in certain circumstances, it's only helpful if you randomly get into that circumstance. In order for Shy Guy to be able to guarantee himself an ally, he first needs to randomly land on a space exactly 4 spaces away. So you're not really improving your odds all that much, you're kind of just kicking the can down the road. The same applies for Daisy. Sure, if you happen to fall 2 spaces short of the star, she's great. If you were playing as Bowser, you probably wouldn't have fallen 2 spaces short to begin with. The second issue is with allies. On the surface, allies seem to be insanely broken. They give you more options of dice to better improve your odds in the future, and they give you a passive bonus for the rest of the game. It seems like characters who can reliably nab an ally early on should absolutely dominate. And to be fair, in most games, that's probably true. But with the specific characters we chose for this simulation, allies didn't actually help all that much. Across all 3,000 games, Bowser only got 1,162 allies. Steve got 1,354, Shy Guy got 1,539, and Daisy got 1,632. So, the more consistent characters were able to get allies significantly more often than Bowser or even the Control, showing that they are effective at landing on specific spaces. And yet, in the end, they barely seem to make a difference. Why? Well, first of all, Bowser's base die is so insane that he's basically his own ally. The expected value of a standard die, which remember is better than Shy Guy and Daisy, is 3.5. Adding in a free 1 or 2 from an ally brings that up to 5. Pretty good, but also only slightly better than Bowser's base die without any allies at 4.7. On average, you're sacrificing 1.3 spaces early on in the game for potentially 0.3 more spaces later. In a 10-turn game, you need to get an ally in the first 2 turns to make up that ground. Another problem with allies is that they inherently introduce more randomness. At the start of the game, Shy Guy can only roll a 0 or a 4. Nice and reliable. But the moment you get one ally, you have a chance to get a 1, 2, a 5, or a 6. Throwing in a second ally, and you could get a 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, or 8. The more allies you get, the less consistent these dies become, and are therefore less effective tools in your belt. You're putting in all this work to, effectively, get to Bowser's starting point. All told, in this specific simulation, allies only improved a character's odds of winning by 2 to 4%. Again, this is likely because Bowser is so dominant that anyone else getting just one ally probably doesn't matter. Although, I was able to find that the ally with the highest win rate was Luigi. By like a weirdly high margin. I actually have no idea why this happened. It feels like it shouldn't matter all that much, but hey, I guess it's Ouija time. Now, to be fair, this simulation isn't perfect. There are loads of different types of spaces that you may or may not want to land on. For instance, I didn't include any bad spaces that you might want to specifically avoid. It made the AI logic way too complicated, though, to be fair, Bowser might actually be better at avoiding spaces than Daisy or Shy Guy, because there's almost no overlap between his 2 dice. Unless the bad space is right in front of you, you can choose a specific die to guarantee that you pass any bad luck spaces in your path. And I do want to reiterate, Daisy and Shy Guy are by no means bad characters. This simulation shows that they were able to reliably get more allies, and as a result, performed better than Steve the Standard Guy, who, on paper, has a better die for movement. So yes, my first tier list probably needs an update. These consistent characters aren't nearly as bad as I first thought, but in the end, it's still not enough to stand up to the might of the Koopa King. In the immortal words of Jack Black, your Tyranian belt buckle is improperly bejeweled. Yeah, that was Bowser, right? That seems like, I mean, Mario might have worn a belt at some point that he could roast. I don't know, that seems like, yeah, no, I'm right. So, there you have it, gamers. A more nuanced analysis of Super Mario Party for your more nuanced palate. So go forth with this new knowledge and dominate every game of Super Mario Party that you probably won't play anymore. I mean, there's been 2 new Mario Party games since then, and they totally got rid of the character dice system, so literally none of this is relevant anymore, but, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have devoted 2 weeks of my life to learning to code for this. Folks, I'm not gonna bore you with some long-winded intro. You've read the title. Today, I'm going to make the perfect Mario Party board. Now, some of you may be scoffing at the very idea and lamenting about how hyperbolic YouTube titles have become nowadays. I mean, how can one claim to have created something objectively perfect when it is, at its core, based purely on subjective values? Nintendo has spent decades attempting to create the best possible boards. How the heck is some YouTuber with no experience in game design supposed to outdo them? Well, the answer is simple. I'm not going to create the perfect board. I'm going to derive it. See, there is a massive but finite number of possible ways you can combine red, blue, and green spaces to create a Mario Party board. And if there is a finite number of boards, that must mean that one is objectively the best. So no, today I'm not creating a board from nothing. I am creating an equation that will pull this ideal board from the ether. A perfectly balanced gaming experience, giving you the most optimized fun possible. Now, this may seem like a lot of work to go through for a simple game, but this isn't a game. This is Mario Party. Nintendo, if you're watching, Merry Christmas, because I'm about to give you the best possible Mario Party board. Richard, hit that intro. Right, so my goal is to make the perfect Mario Party board, but there's one problem. I've never made a Mario Party board before, so to learn how these boards are made and what makes them good, I scoured the internet for basically every list I could find. Tier lists, listicles, hour-long YouTube video lists. If you've made a list of the best Mario Party boards, I have seen you. And from this research, I compiled a list of around 20 boards that generally seem to be considered the best. And I picked apart these boards piece by piece to see what these transcendent boards have in common. And from this, I have derived the 7 factors of a great Mario Party board. If we can craft a board that excels in all 7 of these areas, then we will have the perfect board to strangle your friends to. The first factor is board length. We want to ensure that our board isn't so long that it takes forever to get anywhere, but also long enough that it doesn't get repetitive retreading the same ground over and over. Tallying up all the spaces for every board on my list, I was able to find that the best boards have, on average, 85 spaces. But in addition to the raw number of spaces, I also wanted to look at how long each board's loop was. After all, 85 spaces in a straight line is going to feel very different from 85 spaces in tight, branching paths. Wow! The average board on this list had an outer loop of around 48 spaces, with the remaining 37 serving as branching paths and shortcuts. This pattern even held true for the more linear boards like Pagoda Peak and Mario's Rainbow Castle, which only had an average of 50 spaces total because there were no branching paths. Now personally, I grew up playing boards like Goomba's Booty Boardwalk, so naturally I think that these more straight race to the finish boards are hot garbage. So for our board, I'll be using these metrics. Factor number 2 is space distribution. We know how many spaces we should have and roughly how they should be arranged, but we still need a way to figure out what those spaces should be. Analyzing the maps of popular Mario Party boards, I was able to find the standard distribution of space types. On average, 58.74% of spaces should be blue. 10.23% should be red, 25.11% should be green, and the remaining 5.92% should be other types of special spaces. Bowser, Lucky, stuff like that. By maintaining this space distribution, we not only ensure that you get a nice mix of good and bad throughout the game, but we also ensure that you don't end up playing the same 5 1v3 minigames that they cannot figure out how to balance. What am I even supposed to do here? Factor number 3 is a bit more abstract than the first two, but no less important. Player autonomy. Mario Party is largely a game of chance, but you need to give the players some amount of control and influence on how the game plays out. Otherwise, you're not really playing the game, you're just watching a bunch of computers play roulette. Which ironically actually did make the list of best boards, so maybe that's fun too, I don't know. Essentially, players need to be given a lot of choices throughout the game. This can be accomplished by a simple fork in the road, unique shops with different items, and optional events like the Womp Tolls in Horrorland, bribing Goombas in Goomba's Greedy Gala, or those cannons in DK's Treetop Temple, which never send me where I want to go. No, stop, no! Giving players autonomy is crucial if you want to keep them engaged. But it is perhaps secondary to the fourth factor, that being that nothing you choose actually matters. Mario Party is, at its core, a cosmic mistake, pure chaos manifested as the perfect friendship-destroying machine. Sure, giving players lots of choices is good, but what's even more fun is giving them the illusion of choice. Yeah, sure, pick whatever path you want. You're gonna get chance timed into oblivion in a few turns all the same. This is what makes Mario Party special, and what keeps every single game tense and exciting. But it's a delicate balance. You need to leave players just the right amount of control, just enough hope to grab onto, so it hurts all the more when it's ripped away by the cold, uncaring power of statistics. The perfect Mario Party board should include an equal number of opportunities to create well thought out plans, and random chaos to completely shatter them. But you know what's even better than pure random chaos? When you get to inflict that chaos on your friends. The fifth factor is interaction with other players. After all, if you have no way of affecting other players in the game outside of minigames, you may as well be playing on 4 separate boards. A lot of boards will simply use items to accomplish this, but based on my research, boards with specific features that allow you to hinder specific players in unique ways are way more memorable. Chilly Waters has a frozen lake in the middle with lots of branching paths, so you can use it to get around the board super quick. But if someone else comes onto it, then it'll break and send you both back to the start. So you can literally throw yourself upon the sword and take someone else down with you. But perhaps the most standout example for me is the best board in Mario Party history, Koopa's Tycoon Town, where you can buy out hotels from your competitors to steal stars from them. I tell ya, nothing feels better than planning out the perfect route to snipe a hotel from the person in first and suddenly make up a 6-star deficit. I took 1 business class in college and dropped it after the first day because it was way too confusing. But this I understand. With these 5 categories, you can make a pretty darn good board. But there is one more factor that I found cropping up again and again that makes a board truly spectacular. It's a little abstract and hard to pin down, but every single great board contains some sort of game within the game. A secondary goal or objective that changes the way that you play. This can take a ton of different forms. The aforementioned ruthless capitalism of Koopa's Tycoon Town, the stamp collecting side quest in Rainbow Galleria that can nab you a whole bunch of coins, or Mario's Rainbow Castle and Shy Guy's Perplex Express, where the star is temporarily replaced with Bowser, and suddenly everyone's scrambling to move as slow as possible. Ah! Adding in a little something extra that changes the basic gameplay loop is what makes a board truly memorable, and not just board : snow, board : fruit, board : actual biblical hell. And finally, the 7th factor is a bit less scientific than the rest, but a great board's gotta have a cool theme. Some kind of fun setting to tie the whole thing together. That's it. I don't have any data or examples for this one. Just make it look pretty. Probably should have picked a better one to end it on, but And thus, we have derived the 7 factors to create a perfect Mario Party board. If you need help remembering, here's a helpful acronym. If you want to create the perfect Mario Party board, you gotta be a I blame you for this. But now that we have uncovered this secret knowledge, it is time to put this method to the test and craft the perfect board. One that perfectly encapsulates each and every core tenet in perfectly integrated and layered ways. I wrote perfect way too many times here. And thus, I give you Thus, I give you all the consummate Mario Party board, Larry's Ludicrous Lagoon, set on a beautiful tropical island. Ignore my terrible art, boring shape, and the fact that it literally doesn't actually have a lagoon. This is your standard type of Mario Party board. The star will appear in one of a few preset locations, it costs 20 coins to buy, and once someone gets it, it moves to a new space. Also, you'll notice that it's named after one of the Koopalings. This is to maybe incentivize Nintendo to, actually include enough boards instead of some weird river rapid side mode that literally no one asked for. Yes, I'm still salty that I spent $60 on this game. Anyway, this board has exactly 85 spaces, with 45 blue, 8 red, 19 green, 3 Bowser, and 2 Donkey Kong spaces. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. To make sure I arranged these spaces in an interesting way, I started by making every 6 spaces a red space. I then placed 1 to 2 green spaces in between, made some of the red spaces Bowser spaces, turned the rest blue, and moved some around to make it a bit less formulaic and repetitive. This ensures that both the board as a whole and individual segments of the board have a good distribution of space types. I also laid them out so that there's no stretch of more than 10 spaces without some sort of branch. This ensures that on a decent roll, you'll always have some sort of choice to make. So that's the first 2 factors checked off, but now I'd like to take you on a little tour of this island, its many features, and how I derived them all from our 7 factors. Our players begin here, on the southwest shore of the island. I imagine this as the prototypical first board of a Mario Party game, so the beginning section is pretty simple. A stretch of 6 spaces, mostly blue, 1 red, 1 green item space that's flavored as a Pianta fishing to fit the theme. Since the average roll on a 10-sided die is 5.5, on your first turn, you're probably not gonna reach the first fork. You're gonna have 1 turn to get your bearings before anything crazy happens. At the first fork, you'll come across the first major set piece of this board, the volcano. When the game starts, the volcano is dormant. However, there are a few happening spaces around the board that will cause the volcano to erupt, spewing magma balls across the board that will temporarily change some of the spaces. Early in the game, these changes won't be anything crazy, maybe just changing a few blue spaces to red for a few turns, but as you get deeper into the game, the volcano's effects will become more and more intense whenever it's triggered. It'll start affecting more spaces and start throwing out super red spaces that take away 6 coins, Bowser spaces, maybe even extra DK spaces. There are 4 happening spaces that will trigger this volcano, meaning that in a 20-turn game, you can expect it to go off around 3 to 4 times. But you can also buy an item called Larry's Wand, which you can use to trigger the volcano at any time you choose. And you'll see why you might want to do that in a bit. This is designed to increase the randomness and chaos of the board, while the wand also gives you some strategic opportunities to literally rain on other players' parades. Rain hot magma and lava, that is. As it should be. If you follow the north path around the back of the volcano, you'll come across a Goomba pirate looking for money. Landing on his event space gives you a chance to earn some bonus cash, which you'll probably want because it's also home to the first shop. And now, a lot of you may be thinking, hey, I thought you said that there were no straightaways longer than 10 spaces, but that looks pretty long to me, mister. And you'd be right, which is why in the middle of this path, I've included the Plessy Dock. If you pass this, you'll be given the option to pay a small fee to have Plessy take you across the board, so it functions as a branched path. But as an added little twist, there's also a happening space here where you'll encounter Messi, Plessy's evil twin and pro soccer player that everyone keeps telling me I look like. Messi will grab you and take you to a totally random space along the shore. Maybe he'll be a pal and take you super close to the store, or maybe he'll punch your hopes and dreams to the opposite side of the court. Again, I don't know anything about soccer. If you can avoid him, up here you'll find the first classic Bowser space. Land here and Bowser will spin his Wheel of Pain, filled with all sorts of negative effects for you and potentially everyone else too. Going back to the first branch, if you went east into the island, you can follow the path into the woods, or you can venture into the volcano itself and try your luck at the Path of Peril. If any of you were looking at my space math from earlier and realized that it didn't exactly check out, you can go ahead and edit your comment now. When you enter this cave, 8 random spaces will pop out of the lava. And when I say random, I mean random. They could be red, blue, green, with all sorts of weird effects. You can make money, lose money, get items, lose stars. If you can dream it, the Path of Peril can make it happen, baby! At the very end, there is one of 2 chance spaces, which operate just like any other chance space in Mario Party, in that it seems random, but is secretly programmed to cause the most chaos possible. And after that is an event where Larry will stop you and make you spin a wheel to gain or lose something important on your way out, just in case you rolled a 10 and skipped over all the chaos before. This section is for all you gamblers out there. You might walk out stacked with cash or completely broke. And once you leave, all the spaces will sink back into the lava and re-randomize the next time someone comes on in. And as one last added twist, if the volcano erupts while you're inside, whether due to a happening space or someone using a wand item to activate it, you'll be launched to a random space on the board. If that all seems too crazy, you can choose to continue east into the forest, and both these paths are different lengths and spit out in different places, so there are tactical reasons to take one over the other, aside from just channeling your inner chaotic neutral. Continuing north, you can link up with the shore path and run into some piranha plant spaces. They have a 50-50 chance of being awake and stealing 10 coins, or asleep where you get a free item. But if you choose to venture further into the forest, you'll encounter perhaps my favorite feature of this board. Ukiki. For those who don't know, Ukiki is that one monkey that always stole your hat in Mario 64. Well, he's back, and he's still up to his thieving ways. In this forest, there are 4 green spaces that will summon Ukiki to you. If you pay him a small fee, you can choose another player and send Ukiki after them. During the next turn, Ukiki will show up, spin a wheel, and steal something random from that player. Probably something small like a couple more coins than you initially paid or an item. And Ukiki will keep it for himself. You don't get it if you hired him. I mean, he's a thieving monkey. What did you expect? But here's where things get interesting. If Ukiki comes after you, before spinning the wheel, you can bribe him to go steal 2 things from someone else. And this can happen indefinitely, but his price increases every time he bounces to a new person, and the amount of stuff he can steal also increases. And the quality of items he can steal increases also. After only 2 or 3 bounces, suddenly you're risking losing large sums of coins or even stars. The dude's like Beetlejuice. One person summons him, and a few turns later the game is devolved into pure chaos as everyone scrambles to pass the buck until one person gets absolutely slammed. I wanted to have the energy of stacking a bunch of +2s in Uno. But there is one more wrench that I want to throw into this. There's some monkey wrench pun in there somewhere, but I can't find it. If you happen to land on an Ukiki space while he's out thieving, you can play a little micro game in the board, something simple like rhythm or mashing, and depending on how well you do, you can steal a bit from Ukiki's stash that he's accumulated throughout the game. Now, these games should be difficult. You shouldn't be able to just nail it every time with a couple rounds practice. But if you can make it happen, you could sit back the whole game watching other players tear each other apart, then sneak in and grab all their stolen stars for the win. This introduces some strategy. You need to pick your targets carefully to make sure you get the most bang for your buck, while ensuring that they don't just send them right back at you. And you need to decide when to take the hit and when to pay up and send them away. But more importantly, you need to strategize how to repair all your broken friendships as Ukiki steals every bit of goodwill that you and your friends had for each other. Long live Ukiki, let chaos reign! Once you make it out of the forest, you'll reach the beach where the inhabitants of the island are throwing a beach party. You can play a game of beach volleyball, visit Purple Toad's Shake Shack item shop, land on another chance space, or hit one of the 2 Donkey Kong spaces where you can play a small micro game and get a bunch of coins or a free star. I mean, it is the first board after all. We gotta give them some hope. And with that, you loop back around to the start to do the whole thing again. And thus, you have the perfect Mario Party board. Or perhaps one of the perfect Mario Party boards. After all, there are 6 more Koopalings who still need their own amazing boards. I tried to keep this one very much in the style of a classic board, but I got a lot more ideas left in the tank, and they only get crazier. So if you'd like to see this become an ongoing series, then maybe share this video with a friend. If it's popular enough, maybe I'll round off the Koopa family. And if any employees from Nintendo are watching and looking to get out of some work, as it were, look, just whenever the next Mario Party game comes out, maybe just send a couple of copies my way and nobody's gotta know a thing, alright? Also, like $20 would be nice, because I'm pretty sure Ukiki stole my wallet at some point as well. Where's that monkey? A few weeks ago, I created the perfect Mario Party board. And today, I'm gonna do it again. Now, I hear your skepticism rippling through the fabric of space and time. How can you expect to capture lightning in a bottle? Not once, but twice. It's pretty simple, actually. You just put a lightning rod in an area of the world that gets frequent thunderstorms, wire it up to a supercapacitor, wait for lightning to strike the lightning rod, and then a portion of that strike's energy will be transferred into the supercapacitor, which can then be safely placed into a bottle of your choosing. My point being, for those who didn't see the previous episode, I have devised a formula that can be used to create an infinite number of Mario Party boards, each one as perfect as the last. So, based on popular demand, I give you part 2 in an ongoing series where I attempt to make the perfect Mario Party game. Richard, hit that intro. Okay, so if you haven't seen the previous video already, don't worry. You don't need to see it to understand this one. You can just go back afterwards if you want to better understand some of the choices that I make here. But there is one more factor to a great Mario Party board that I contemplated adding, but ultimately cut. And that's how dynamic a board is. A truly great board should change in some way as the game goes on, so you're not just running through the same loops over and over. This makes it possible to play longer games without it becoming boring. But beyond that, I wanted boards that change from game to game, so you can replay them over and over, and it feels fresh each time. You'll see what I mean as we get into it. I created Larry's Ludicrous Lagoon to be the first board in a hypothetical new game, so I didn't want to get too crazy with that stuff. But now that you've got one game under your belt, the gloves are coming off. All right, what's up? What's up? What's up? Another factor we talked about last time was the balance between order and chaos. Should a board be predictable and consistent so you can strategize and make plans, or completely random, but random in a way where it seems like it's screwing you over on purpose? You know what I mean? Like, people don't just land on 9 red spaces in a row, right? I mean, that sort of stuff doesn't just happen, right? Son of a bitch. So today, I thought I'd create not one, but 2 boards that both contain dynamic elements, but one that leans more towards order and another towards chaos. That way people have some variety in their Mario Party gameplay. Let's start with the orderly one. Now, when I think of order and consistency, I think of gears, clocks, periodic motion. But, as it turns out, there are no Koopalings that start with C, and I've already set a precedent for alliterative board names that I'm sure I won't regret 2 episodes from now. So, using that same idea with a new theme, I present to you Wendy's Wacky Wharf. This board is a circular pier with 2 perpendicular paths crossing through the middle. Players can move around the outside of the circle or take a shortcut through the center. Pretty simple. Now, those of you who watched the last episode and are exceptionally fast at counting might be wondering, hang on, that seems like a pretty small board. A far cry from the statistically optimal 85 spaces. I mean, what is this, Super Mario Party? For real though, why? Well, that would be because you're only seeing half of the board. Or a third if you want to get technical. This is a wharf after all, so at the start of the game, a series of boats will come down and encircle the outside of the pier. These boats range from 2 to 4 spaces in length and line up exactly with the spaces of the wharf. So at the start or end of each boat, you can choose to jump onto the boat or back down onto the wharf. There are a bunch of different types of boats that we'll get into later, and these boats are randomly selected at the start of the game. So one game, the first ship might be a merchant vessel where you can buy items, but another it might be a yacht casino or a pirate ship. But we are not done yet. At the end of each turn, these ships will all move in a counterclockwise direction around the wharf. So how it will work is that the last ship will leave, the rest will move that many spaces ahead, and a new ship of the same length will come in at the start, so it'll all always line up. So this means that a clever player can end their turn on a boat and let it carry them ahead at the end of the round. And if you look at the last boat, you can plan on exactly how many spaces you'll move. So you can use this to quickly advance towards the star, but if you're not careful and don't get off soon enough, you could pass it altogether. And if you're on a boat when it reaches the end, you're carried away off the screen and have to swim back and lose half of your coins. No good. Now you may be thinking, wow, that sounds insanely powerful. Why wouldn't I just always stay on the boats the whole time? Well, first of all, not all of the boats are good, as I'll explain later, but there is another reason why these boats might be more risky than you think. In the previous episode, I included a special item called Larry's Wand that you could use to activate an effect specific to that board. I figured this could be a running trend with each board, and in this case, if you use Wendy's Wand, you will permanently reverse the directions that the boats move at the end of each turn. So you could hop on a boat at the very beginning thinking you can ride it all the way to victory when, suddenly you're sent back into the Shadow Realm, half your coins are gone, and your friend has a black eye and is trying to find that live hand grenade that their grandpa gave them.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
The idea is that throughout the game, players will be periodically switching this direction to either help themselves or hurt other players. So you need to plan your route based on what you think other people are going to do, which I think is pretty fun. So that's the general gimmick of this board. Let's get into some more specifics. The first step is to figure out how these spaces should be laid out. I knew I wanted around 85 spaces in total. I also knew that I wanted 2 circles with an equal number of spaces, so the wharf and the boats will always line up perfectly, and 2 inner cross paths. Now, I could have gone through a painstaking process of trial and error to perfectly align these spaces, but come on, you know what kind of channel this is. It wouldn't be a Chiptide video without a real quick math lesson. Alright, so the outside of a circle is known as a circumference, and the line that goes through the center is called a diameter. We know that this board is going to have 2 circumferences of equal length, one for the wharf and one for the boats, and 2 equal diameters going through the center. And we know that all of these added together should equal 84, just because it was easier to use an even number. So we have one equation, but 2 unknown variables. So as it stands, there are theoretically a bunch of different possible combinations that we could use here. If we want to get one definitive answer, then we need another equation relating the circumference to the diameter. And luckily, that's super easy to do. As it turns out, in every single circle, regardless of its size, the circumference is simply equal to the diameter times pi. You know that one really weird number that you always hear about like mid-March? So, if c is equal to pi times d, then we can simply replace every c in our equation with pi times d. Do some algebra to find that the diameter should be equal to about 10 spaces, which means that the circumference should be equal to 32 spaces. And let that be a lesson, folks. If you want to be lazy, learn some math. Now, I did run into a slight geometry problem. I wanted to include a little pier at the top to serve as both the area where you start and to clearly delineate the start and end of the boat track. But that does remove 4 spaces from the outer diameter. So to keep this board long enough, I added in a little side path in the third quadrant, which also helps to mix up the pattern a little bit. So this is the general layout of the board. The inner ring is pretty standard with the optimal distribution of red, green, and blue spaces that we talked about last time. There are a total of 5 blue spaces where the star could possibly spawn, which cost 20 coins to buy. There's a shop along the left cross pier that sells pretty basic items, a Bowser space where Bowser steals a bunch of stuff from you, and a DK space where you get some free coins or a star. These green spaces all have the same effect as Wendy's wand, reversing the direction of the boats. These 4 across the water have you hopping on the backs of sea creatures. If you land on one, you might get 5 free coins, or they might dump you in the water and send you back to the start. These 2 are item spaces. The one right at the end is a chance space. This one's a black market where you can go under the docks to buy some rare items. This one's a lucky space where you get a random amount of coins ranging from 1 to 20. And landing on this one right after the final boat causes the ships to all advance in the middle of a turn, possibly messing up everyone's plans. Now, let's get into the exciting part, the ships. I wanted there to be a lot of variety in the types of ships you can get, so I made a whole bunch ranging from 2 to 4 spaces in length. For example, there is a 2-space shop ship with, well, a shop. I feel like that's pretty obvious at this point. Psych! It wasn't obvious because it was actually a decoy ship. You think it's a shop, but when you go in, it's actually a Goomba who mugs you and takes some coins or an item. Hey, how about them pockets? Let's see them pockets. And just to be clear, there are also real shop ships too, so you have to try and remember which ones are real and which ones are fake as the ships move around. I think it should be programmed so that there can't be any more than 2 of each ship type out at any one time. So it's not like there's a shop every other space. Keep the variety. There's also a fishing boat where you can get a free item by passing this pianta, and some simple ships of each length that just have random spaces on them. So there's not 2 million events on the board at once. But those are all pretty basic, so let's get a little more interesting. Last time, some of you got real mad that there wasn't a boo that allowed you to steal stars. Mostly because there was a monkey who allowed you to steal stars instead. But you folks will be glad to know that here you may encounter a ghost ship with the classic Mario Party boo that can steal coins or a star from any player of your choosing whenever you pass them. For a fee, of course.
Your mortal soul!
Or 50 coins, whichever works better for you. And some other ideas that I thought would be fun. There could be a pirate ship where you have to challenge the captain to a small micro game to either earn a portion of his loot or be forced to walk the plank and lose half your coins. Or a casino yacht filled with happening spaces where you can bet coins on a game of roulette or something. There's also a navigator ship with event spaces that will advance the ships or swap their direction, a DK ship with an extra DK space, or a star ship with an extra star you can purchase, and it looks like a spaceship. Because I think that's fun. And last but not least, a Bowser ship with all red spaces and a Bowser space at the end. Now, you may be wondering why anyone would even go on a ship like this in the first place. You just avoid the Bowser space altogether. Well, I thought it could be fun if every single space next to this ship on the wharf temporarily becomes a bad luck space. And if you land on it, you're blasted with bullet bills from the ship's cannons and lose half your coins and are sent back to the start. So, you might want a chance hopping aboard. Though, I will admit, I'm not entirely sure what to do with this Bowser space on the ship itself. I feel like it should be different from the regular one and, somehow pirate-themed, but, it's a little too much to force you to play a whole game of liar's dice or be forced to serve an eternity aboard the Dutchman, right? Yeah, that'd be too much. Right? These are all the ones that I could come up with, But if you have any more ideas for cool ship types, let me know in the comments down below. And that's just about the whole board. So, to recap, the basic gameplay loop for this one involves using these ships to quickly move around the board, and the wand item to control where those ships go. You'll have to get off the ships eventually to get a star, and I tried to include some interesting stuff on the inside as well, so there's an actual reason to strategize and plan different routes. The fact that the ships move around throughout the game, and you get a different set of ships every time you play, will hopefully keep this board fun and interesting even with multiple replays. But let me know what you think. Do you like this idea? Are there any changes you think I should make? Let me know in the comments down below, and maybe I can do a follow-up episode at the end of this little series making changes to each board based on your feedback and stuff. It should be fun. But what's next? In the beginning, I mysteriously alluded to the fact that I had 2 ideas for dynamic boards, and one that was far more chaotic, nay, anarchic than this. Well, for that, I'm afraid you're gonna have to wait for the next episode. I was hoping to be able to squeeze 2 boards into each video since I didn't have to explain all the criteria and stuff, but alas, this board was way more complicated than the last one, and I want to make sure that I have enough time to edit everything. So, if you want to follow along with this series and see the next board as soon as it's out, then hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon to get notified. I'm not going to do one of these every single week. I've got a ton of ideas for new videos this year that I want to sprinkle in between, so keep an eye out in the next few weeks for more of this and loads of other stuff. Now, if you'll excuse me, Richard's thinking he's real slick right about now on that boat over there, so I think I'm going to just send him to the Shadow Realm real quick. Huzzah! You nerd! You fool! You loser! Is that a grenade? What is the best board in Mario Party history? This answer will vary depending on, let's be real, the age of the person you ask. Western Land, Koopa's Tycoon Town, maybe you'll get a weirdo who throws out Blooper Beach. But if you ask me, King Boo's Haunted Hideaway from Mario Party 8 might just be my favorite for one simple reason. It is completely different every time you play. With this board alone, you can play a near infinite number of games and still capture that magical first time feel. There's only one problem. It also kinda sucks. So, in this third installment in my ongoing journey to create the perfect Mario Party game, I am going to create a new board that fixes every problem with the best board in Mario Party history. Richard, hit that intro. Now, I'll admit, I have a lot of nostalgia for Mario Party 8. It was one of the first games I ever really played, and I spent literal hours, probably several days of my life in King Boo's Haunted Hideaway and Koopa's Tycoon Town. But for those who are less familiar, I can do a little recap. Maybe you're an older fan who was scared away by all the Waggle games, or you're a young'un who wasn't playing the franchise. Richard, I think you made a typo. This says that Mario Party 8 came out 19 years ago. I mean, what do you mean that's not a typo? Okay, I can recover from this. King Boo's Haunted Hideaway. If you couldn't tell by the name, this board is set in a haunted house. And, as I alluded to in the beginning, the layout is randomly generated every time you play. The board is made up of 12 rooms. One is the starting area, one contains the star, one contains a pitfall, and everything else is chosen from a set of pre-made space rooms. You have no map at the start, so your goal is to travel through the mansion to be the first to find the star. If you happen to find the pitfall room, you're sent back to the beginning. And if you find the star and have enough money, then everyone is warped back outside, the mansion re-randomizes, your map is cleared, and the whole thing starts over again. Now, while I love this concept in theory, there is one glaring issue. It's basically 100% luck. Because your map gets cleared and the board is completely random every time a star is collected, the game essentially comes down to making a blind guess at the first fork in the road and hoping for the best. Aside from like holding onto a Springo candy in case the person in front of you finds the pitfall, there's really not a lot of strategy. Which, you know, for some people, can still be fun. But if you've seen the first episodes in this series, you'll know that I want these boards to constantly give you a sense of agency and control, so you feel like an active participant in the game. So today, I am going to create a new board inspired by these same concepts, but with a few big tweaks to make it better. And a whole lot of math to justify my choices. So with that, I give you all Iggy's Eerie Estate. And yes, I know I established a pattern of alliterative board names in the first 2 episodes, but Iggy don't play by no rules. As an homage to the board that inspired it, this board is also set in a haunted mansion, and my working concept is, stick with me, Mario Party meets like one of those games that was trendy on YouTube for a while where the players aren't allowed to see the board, if you know what I'm talking about, meets, stick with me, Resident Evil. I said stick with me! I want to keep the original ideas of randomly generating boards using preset rooms and slowly uncovering the map from the original, but with one major change. Instead of the star having its own dedicated room, it simply takes the place of a space like any normal board, so it can theoretically be anywhere. And when someone gets the star, you're not warped outside and the map doesn't re-randomize. Instead, the next star will be spawned in a new random room that no player is currently occupying, and Iggy will pop up and give you some sort of cryptic clue or riddle as to where to look next. Something like, if you wish to find the star, you must beat your friend with a crowbar. And then you have to remember that there was a crowbar in the garage, and that's where the star is. Probably not that one, though. Turns out I'm not good at coming up with riddles. But, I don't know. Iggy said so, so come here, Richard. So, the challenge and the sort of game within the game with this board is learning the layout of the mansion so you can correctly guess the new location based on the riddle and finding the quickest route to get there. And this also serves a double purpose of keeping you engaged on other players' turns. If they're in a different part of the mansion than you, you're still going to want to pay attention to learn the layout. Unlike the original, I think it might be best if this board has no minimap and no ability to look at rooms that no player is currently occupying. So, if you're able to figure out from Iggy's clue that the next star is in the kitchen, say, it's up to you to remember where the kitchen is and how to get back there as quickly as possible. But, of course, we can't make things too easy for you, so let's cast one more stone into this pond. Whenever the star moves, Iggy will also change one thing about the mansion layout. Maybe he rotates a room, swaps 2 of the rooms, changes all the spaces in a room to red, something to shake things up. So the whole mansion isn't completely changed every time, it's slowly evolving throughout the game. So you might think you know the fastest way to get back to the library, only to find that your path is now blocked, forcing you to improvise. Hopefully this will keep things fresh as the game goes on. I think all of this will hopefully create a very new experience from any other Mario Party board, forcing you to learn the layout like those blind games, and slowly learning the fastest ways to trek back and forth across the mansion like Resident Evil. See, you stuck with me and I didn't lead you astray. But while this concept is all well and good, I'm not here to be a simple ideas guy. I want to figure out how we can make this actually work. So, Nintendo, if you're watching, you're welcome, because I'm about to do a whole lot of work for you. So, the first challenge is to figure out how these rooms should be generated. King Boo's Haunted Hideaway was actually very small compared to a lot of other Mario Party boards, with only 9 rooms making up the traversable part of the house. Now, for the way that board was designed, completely re-randomizing every time, that makes sense. I mean, don't make a massive map if it's just going to get scrapped every few turns. However, for this board concept to work, it needs to be a bit bigger, about the same size as a regular Mario Party board to give players room to explore. So, let's start with the basics. Since Mario Party games are typically only 20 to 25 turns long, I don't want players wandering aimlessly around for half the game. I want them to find the first star and start getting clues, probably in only 3 to 4 turns. We've established in previous videos that this game will be using a 10-sided die, meaning that players will move an average of 5.5 spaces a turn. That means that the star should spawn an average of 19.25 spaces from the start. So with that information, we can start to get an idea of how large rooms should be. If we make each room contain 6 to 7 spaces, then the star should be placed in a room 3 rooms away from the entrance. And we determined in a previous video that an ideal Mario Party board should have around 85 spaces. So at an average of 6.5 spaces per room, that means that this board should have 13 total rooms. 1 more than the original, but really 4 more because every room will be traversable. See, that math wasn't too bad. And don't worry, it's about to get way worse. We know that we want to have 13 total rooms, but these rooms can't just be arranged all willy-nilly, or else you might end up with rooms that are off in the void that you can't get to. I'm not trying to trek out to the shed to get a star. So you might think we can just implement a rule that says that every square needs to be touching, but we still run into a problem. Every Mario Party board, or at least all the good ones, are built as a loop. There are no dead ends. Well, except for King Boo's Haunted Hideaway, which did have dead ends, but we've already talked about why that's not so great. So I want to add in a constraint to this room generation process that says that every room must be adjacent to at least 2 other rooms. There has to be an entrance and an exit. Now, technically, we could end here. This ensures that every board is fully accessible and you won't get stuck. But it doesn't ensure that every board will be particularly interesting. You might get something that's just a big loop, for instance, which kind of defeats the purpose of learning the map and different routes. So I'm going to add in 1 more constraint. Of the 13 rooms, at least 7, so more than half, must be adjacent to at least 3 other rooms. That way, we can include branching paths and give players choices. So, to recap, 13 rooms, everyone must be adjacent to at least 2, and more than half must be adjacent to at least 3. This will ensure that the randomly generated mansion is fully traversable and with no dead ends, and gives you options for what paths to take. But let's talk about paths. We know how these 13 rooms should be arranged, but what about the spaces within those rooms? I could just take the easy way out and just connect everything up in a grid so you can go any direction you want. But there are a few issues with that approach. 1, it'll make traversing the mansion way too easy. You won't need to learn any paths, you can just Pythagoras your way over. And 2, as a lot of you pointed out in the last video, having a million branches that constantly force you to stop and pick a direction can really slow down the pace of a game. So to fix this, we need to make it even more complicated. Each room will be randomly assigned one of 4 preset patterns: a straight line, an L, a T, or a cross, rotated any which way. What you'll most likely end up with is a random jumbled mess of paths that don't connect to each other. So next, the game will look for any wall where a path comes in, but not out the other side. If the room with the unconnected path is a T or a cross, it will simply delete the extra path. If it's a line or an L though, it can't delete that path or else you'd still have a dead end. So instead, the next room will have a new path added to accept it. This ensures that every path leads somewhere without having 99% of the inner rooms just turn into crosses anyway. But are we done yet? Well, if you take a gander at the amount of time left in this video, I think you can guess. No, of course we're not done! There could still be cases where you have disconnected loops that remain inaccessible. So to account for this, the game will select the entrance point along the outside and attempt to draw a line from the entrance point to every other room on the board. If there are any rooms or sections that it cannot get to, it will add in 2 paths to connect them: an entrance and an exit. Now the whole board should be completely contiguous and accessible, except for one remaining issue. In order for this system to work, you need to be able to move in any direction. Normally in Mario Party, all paths are one way. But here, that could result in areas that you can't get into, or parts of the mansion that you can enter but never leave. And this is Iggy's Area State, not Iggy's Hotel California. Now, yes, you could technically add in more constraints to ensure that this doesn't happen. But the math required to do so is way more complicated than you think. No, like literally, you have absolutely no idea how much more complicated it is. Like, requiring a PhD in advanced graph theory levels of complicated. I ain't doing that. So to compromise, I'm introducing a Mario Party first. In this board, you can move in any direction you want, but you have to fully commit to one at the start of your turn. You can't just like go back and forth to basically pick whatever space you want to land on. Not only does this make the generation a lot easier, but I think it will ultimately make the game more fun and make getting around more strategic and less annoying. So now we know how to generate the room layout and the pathing, but there's still one thing left. What about the actual spaces themselves? Well, the original King Boo's Haunted Hideaway used preset tiles, and I could do that, but that seems like a lot of work, so let's work smarter and not harder. In the first video, we found that an optimal board will have exactly 58.74% blue spaces, 10.23% red, 25.11% green, and 5.92% special. So, after the game has generated the mansion layout and all the spaces, it will tally up the total number of spaces, which will vary depending on the room types, and then randomly generate these spaces based on these exact proportions, rounding to the nearest whole number when necessary. So, say there are a total of 85 spaces. It will randomly make 8 of them red, 19 green, 3 Bowser, 2 DK, and the rest blue. But if all the green spaces are randomly generated, then what do they do, I hear you asking, thinking you've caught me slipping. But no! Have you not realized yet? I've thought of everything this time. Except for the things that I inevitably have not thought about. Well, when each room is generated, it is given a theme. This theme determines 2 things: the decor of that room and the effects of the green spaces within. Things like a cooking mini game for the kitchen, some sort of gambling thing for the game room, stuff like that. So let me know in the comments any ideas you have for room types and what the green spaces would do in there. Let's make this a collaborative effort this time. And don't worry, I'm definitely not just outsourcing this part because this video ended up way longer than I thought. I mean, can you believe I thought I could do these last two in one video? Amateur. So once all the spaces are laid out, the game is nearly ready to go. The only thing left is to throw in 2 to 3 shops between spaces in select rooms, ensuring that one is exactly 2 rooms away from the start to ensure that people can actually get items early on. And pick a space that's 19 to 21 spaces away from the start to become the star space. And you're ready to go. With this formula, the game should be able to generate a near infinite number of completely unique and interesting Mario Party boards. And thus, the promise of this series has been fulfilled. I have created not just the perfect Mario Party board, but every perfect Mario Party board. And so, to recap, here's how Iggy's Eerie Estate works. The game will randomly generate a board made up of 13 rooms, using a series of constraints to ensure that the whole thing is accessible. You have to travel around the house, learning the map as you go, to find the star. Once you do, it will randomly warp to an unoccupied room, Iggy will give you a cryptic riddle as to where it is, and you have to go and find it. Every time the star moves, some small aspect of the house will change, forcing you to constantly adapt your strategy. And, since I didn't mention it yet, the special Iggy's Wand item that I've included in all these will instantly move the star and change some part of the mansion, sort of like a get out of jail free card if someone's about to find the star, or if you know that it's miles away from you. But they're pretty expensive, so people won't constantly abuse it. A complicated board design, to be sure, but ultimately, I think it'll be a lot of fun. And to everyone who's planning on making a super cool fan game based on these board concepts, I'm real sorry for this one. So, what do you think? Do you like it? Can you think of any ways to improve it? Let me know in the comments down below, as well as what Koopaling you'd like me to tackle next. We got 3 down, only 4 to go. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to resume my deep research into graph theory to figure out how many possible board configurations this could make to include in the thumbnail with me looking at it like this. And if the thumbnail didn't look like that, you know that I failed, and if you can solve this problem, please let me know. Help me. Look, I've run out of clever ways to start these at this point. This is part 4 in an ongoing series to create the perfect Mario Party game using math and statistics. If you haven't seen the previous 3 videos, no need to worry, you don't need to watch them in any particular order. There is a playlist in the description down below if you want to watch the rest after this. Richard? Yeah, that's right. I ain't messing around today. Hit that intro. For the first 3 boards in this series, I tried to focus on fixing a common problem with Mario Party. The first was a no-frills star chase with perfectly optimal space distribution. The next 2 focused on keeping boards dynamic and interesting for longer games and repeated plays, using moving elements and random generation. For this next one, I'm gonna try and tackle one of the most complicated and oftentimes most broken systems in Mario Party. The economy. Let me know if this sounds familiar. You're playing a game of Mario Party. You are popping off, winning minigames left and right. You are loaded with items and you're absolutely stacked with coins and have nothing to spend them on. While it doesn't happen every time, I can remember plenty of Mario Party games where coins became basically negligible. You can afford any item you want, minigames kind of become formalities, and it just comes down to who can reach the star first. And this isn't necessarily bad. There are still things like bonus stars and battle minigames to keep things interesting, but I think a game with a properly functioning economy where coins actually matter is way more interesting. Now, there have been official boards in the past that have sought to solve this same problem. My personal favorite is Koopa's Tycoon Town, where instead of buying stars, you're trying to out-invest your opponents in various hotels to dominate the market. I know, real estate simulator sounds like the most boring thing on the planet, but this thing slaps, and it actually rewards you for getting a crap ton of money. There's only one problem. That board is already statistically perfect, and there is nothing I could possibly do to improve it. So for this one, I thought I'd take a slightly different approach to solve the same problem. My goal this week was to create a board that always rewards you for getting as much money as possible. And I think I ended up making something pretty unique. Though, I must warn you, it is not for the faint of heart. I'll be honest, I almost didn't want to share this concept with the masses, for I fear that it may sow the seeds for the destruction of humanity as we know it. If you're one of the dozen or so people trying to make a fan game based on my board concepts, remember, with great power comes great responsibility. So, with that in mind, have you ever wanted to have a few less friends? Are you trying to throw away all your time, relationships, and joy to watch an ultimately meaningless number go up? Do you want to experience all the horrors of late-stage capitalism, all from the comfort of your own home? Then come on down to Morton's Malicious Market. It's shaped like a 4-leaf clover, a worldwide symbol of luck. And believe me, you're gonna need it. You can move around each of the loops as normal and take some of the connecting side paths and shortcuts to get around quicker. However, you'll find no randomly generated star along these paths. For that, you'll have to return to Morton's titular market, located in the center. Whenever you pass through here, you can offer Morton as many coins as you want, and he'll tell you how many stars he'll give you for it. No max limit. Kind of like a shady pawn shop or something. 1 star costs a mere 10 coins, which is pretty cheap, so you might be tempted to rush back there the second you win a minigame. However, you might want to hold the line just a little bit longer, because in Morton's Market, you get a discount for buying in bulk. Sure, if you only have 10 coins, you can lock in a star right now, but if you manage to wait until you have 30 coins, you could get 5 stars. And this seemingly small change will have a massive effect on the gameplay. Because stars get exponentially cheaper the more money you have, your best bet is to hold off on cashing out as long as you possibly can, then nab yourself a boatload of stars at the last minute. However, as you'll soon see, this board also has a truly immoral number of ways that you can lose coins, and more importantly, steal coins from your friends, or have them steal from you. This will, in theory, turn this into a cutthroat game of risk management. Do you cash out now and lock in a few stars? Do you wait a little bit longer and risk winning big, or losing it all to Richard with that stupid smug grin on his face? Do you plan your game perfectly to cash out on the last possible turn, only to roll a 1 and end the game with 300 coins and no stars to your name? The possibilities are endless. So that's the basic idea. Incentivize people to hoard coins for as long as they can, while also implementing features that makes hoarding coins a risk. Now, let's get into some specifics. The first and most important feature to nail down is the price of stars. Now, I'll admit, I tried to run some simulations and stuff to derive the perfect formula, but this is really something that you need to figure out with extensive testing to see how real players actually behave. But as an example, you could make it so the number of stars you can get at any one time is equal to the number of coins you have divided by 10 raised to the power of 1.5 rounded down. I know, kind of a complicated thing to be able to calculate in your head, but basically it just means that you'd get an extra star for every 5 coins you spend, give or take with some rounding shenanigans. Like I said, you definitely need to do some testing to refine this equation and strike a balance where you are massively rewarded for collecting a lot of coins, but you could also conceivably win if you decide to play it safe. Now, I know what some of you are saying. Isn't this a little too complicated for a kid's party game? Maybe. Is it going to stop me from including an entire stock market system on top of all this chaos? No. This whole board concept will really sink or swim depending on how many interesting ways you have to gain or lose money. I don't want it to just come down to who can land on the most blue spaces. So, how about this? Every time you pass by Morton's Market in the center, you have 2 options. You can cash out and buy stars, or you can pay some coins to invest in a certain item. Every single time someone else uses one of those items, you get, I don't know, $5. Again, this provides you with interesting strategic opportunities. Do you use that double dice block to get back to Morton ASAP before someone jacks all your money, knowing that Richard will be collecting royalties every time you do? For me, the answer is simple. Richard can pry my coins from my cold, dead hands. And obviously, even investing in an item at all could be considered a risk because there's a chance that you'll never make your money back. So there's considerations to be made from both sides. Again, you'll need to do a lot of testing to figure out the optimal amount of coins people should get and how much it should cost to invest in each item type. Obviously, more common items should cost more because people are going to be using them more often. And on that note, I haven't talked about items much in the previous videos, but now it seems pretty important, so let's go over a couple that I could see working well in a game like this. Obviously, you have your double and triple dice blocks to help you move further. We could throw in a custom dice block that lets you pick which number you roll, but it only goes up to 5 as opposed to 10. Then we could have a mega mushroom, which makes you big and lets you steal 10 coins from everyone you pass. Thieves' gloves that let you steal items. Maybe throw in the poison mushroom from Super Mario Party that subtracts 5 from the chosen player's next roll. And lastly, the Dulo candy from Mario Party 8. Literally, exactly as it is, unchanged. I don't care if it's the only one that's candy and everything else is a regular item. It's perfect and should never change. Why, yes, I did grow up playing Mario Party 8. How could you tell? And then we have the ongoing tradition of the wand items. If you use Morton's wand, you can immediately initiate a 4-player battle minigame, and the person who used the wand gets to choose how many coins everyone invests and what game you play. Yes, I am giving people the opportunity to choose violence and make everyone go all in on a completely luck-based minigame. Remember, the Chiptide Incorporated is not responsible for any loss of property or life as a result of the choices you make. You can buy these items at one of 4 shops dotted around the board, sold by my main man, Purple Toad. Don't know why I picked the purple one explicitly in the first one, but here we are. Those are just a few items that I came up with, but let me know if you have any other fun item ideas in the comments down below. So, those are the 2 main mechanics of this board. The star is always at the center, and you can get more for buying in bulk, and you can invest in specific items to try and make money faster. Now, let's get on to the rest of the board. In previous videos, I found that a good board typically has around 60% blue spaces, 10% red, 25% green, and the remaining 5% other stuff like Bowser and DK spaces. However, for this one, remember, we want it to feel risky to hold onto coins for a long time. So I decided to bump up the percentage of red spaces just a bit. Or a lot. Like the others, this board has exactly 85 spaces. 39 blue, 20 red, 21 green, 4 Bowser, and 1 DK, arranged like so. And now, I didn't just slap these on randomly. Instead, I tried to carefully position them to provide the maximum level of strategy. So, for example, say you rolled a 1 on your first turn. Well, if you want to avoid landing on a red space, you can't go southeast. If you rolled a 2, you want to avoid northwest, and so on. I tried to make it so that no matter what you roll, your choice at every fork matters. There's also 1 Bowser space located on each loop that does all the classic Bowser shenanigans. Except this time, Bowser communism hits just a little bit harder. And then, I thought it'd be fun to include just 1 DK space. I mean, this is capitalism. We don't do handouts here. As a fun gimmick, I thought it'd be cool if this space works a bit like a star, in that it replaces a random blue space at the start of the game, and every time you land on it, it moves to another random blue space. And then maybe you do a little rhythm bongo minigame or something to get you a bunch of coins, allowing you to escape the vicious cycle of sacrifice and backstabbing to pursue your true passion of music. Screw the man! Beat the system! Rise up, Donkey Kong stands! That just leaves us with a bunch of green spaces to figure out. Now, I was a bit worried that this system might disincentivize people to buy items a bit too much, since coins are so much more valuable. So I decided to include 6 item spaces where you get a random free item. This will pair well, I think, with the stock system, tempting you to use that double dice block. I mean, it was free, wasn't it? What harm could it do? See, apparently, Richard is operating under the false assumption that I am a goddamn fool. I'd rather burn every coin I have than let him have a single one of them. I also added a green space on each point where you can take the Clover Express, a little bus that'll take you to whichever other point you want, just to get around quicker. I threw in 3 chance spaces located close to where you'd re-enter the market. You know, just to really crush people's hopes and dreams at the last possible moment. Normally, chance spaces allow you to swap coins or stars with someone, but I think it might be better if you can only swap coins in this board specifically, since the whole idea behind buying stars is that you're locking them in to play it safe. Or, I don't know, maybe that's also pretty funny, your star's getting eminent domain. I added 2 casino spaces on this little back street. I don't know, it just kind of gave me a shady vibe. So if you land on either of these, you can bet your coins on one of a few little micro games. Look, you might not want to take the risk, but they say that 90% of gamblers quit right before they hit it big. I also threw in a few duel spaces. If you land on one of these, you must pick another player and challenge them to a duel minigame, just like the Dulo Candy, with a bunch of coins on the line. That leaves us with just 1 green space left, which I thought I'd leave up to all of you to pick in the comments. So leave your suggestion for this last space down there and thumbs up any that you think sound really cool, and I'll reveal the winner in the wrap-up video at the end of this series. But I think that's just about everything. Morton's Malicious Market. With just a few minor changes to the way that stars are collected, I think this board will feel completely different from any other board in the series. Is it a little too complicated to ever make it into an actual Nintendo game? Possibly, but only because Nintendo are cowards. Let me shatter lifelong friendships over a couple of fake coins. While this board doesn't have any moving elements to keep it fresh like the previous two, with so many ways to gain and lose money, I think this board will remain exciting and very tense every single time you play. And, you know, there's a very real chance that something will get hurled through your TV in a fit of blind rage when someone has their life savings stolen away in the very last turn of the game, leaving them destitute with absolutely no hope of ever recovering, but that's a sacrifice that I am willing to make. And with that, we are officially over halfway done with this series. So hit that subscribe button if you want to be notified when the next part comes out. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go fight Richard to the death, because I ain't gonna use that double dice block, okay? You won't get a penny from me, sir. Have you ever noticed that every Mario Party game has at least one board that looks like this? Just a straight line where they said, enough of these branching paths, here's the star, here's the road, now go get it. Now, I'll be honest, I'm usually not the biggest fan of these boards. They always feel a little more bland and boring, and yet they always insist on including at least one in every game. But does it have to be that way? It's been a while since my last Mario Party board, and that's because for this one, I knew what I had to do, but I didn't know if I had the strength to do it. That's right, today we're killing Han Solo. And creating the perfect straight line Mario Party board. That too. Richard, hit that intro. Before we get into the actual design, I think it's important to recognize some of the inherent problems with the straight line board, as well as some unique upsides. If you recall back to the very first episode in this series, you'll remember that I defined player choice as one of the core tenets of a good Mario Party board. Without the ability to make interesting and impactful choices, you're not really an active participant in the game. You're just watching numbers get bigger. And with only one direct path to the star, this style of board removes a lot of those choices. If you're not careful, it can basically turn into a game of chutes and ladders, which, as everyone knows, is a boring game for dumb babies. Sorry if you like it, but it's bad. And that being said, branching paths aren't the only type of interesting choice. And let's be honest, 90% of the time, you're just picking the direction that leads towards the star anyway. That's not all that interesting to begin with. Imposing this limitation could force us to be a bit more creative and ultimately come up with something even more fun. Another issue with this type of board is the repetition. In a typical board, sure, you're looping around it several times, but you can take a new and different path each loop. On Goomba's Booty Boardwalk, you're walking past the same dumb fisherman every single time. My man, you haven't caught a single fish in 18 years. Take the hint. What do you mean Mario Party 8 came out 18 years? However, this style of board does have some advantages, and with the right mechanics and twists, you can get a completely new experience unlike any other board in the game. True, if the whole point of the board is just to get to the end as quickly as possible to buy a star, then get sent right back to the beginning to do it again, that's pretty boring. Boards like Rainbow Castle and Shy Guy's Perplex Express break up this system by occasionally changing what's at the end. Sure, sometimes you'll find a star waiting for you at the end, but sometimes you'll find your main man Bowser who will steal a star from you. In those instances, suddenly the game completely changes and everyone is fighting tooth and nail to stay the hell away from the end. I really like that, and I'm totally gonna steal it with a bit of a twist to make me seem smart and original. So from this, we can start to get a sense of what this board is going to look like. It needs to be a straight path where players race to the end, it needs to have unique ways to give players choices, and it needs to mix up the gameplay loop every once in a while. So, all we need to do now is come up with a few gameplay elements that facilitate these three goals. And so, with that, I give you all the 5th board in my hypothetical Mario Party game, Roy's Radical Railway. Because what are trains if not the poster child for moving in a straight line with no choices? Here's the basic premise for the board. It's set in a train yard where players start at the beginning and have to move down the tracks to reach the end as quickly as possible. Your boy Roy will be waiting at the finish, and the first person who gets there can buy a star for 20 coins. Then they're sent back to the beginning to start the whole thing over again. But here's the twist. Every time you buy a star, Roy will ask you to set the price for the next star. It can be 30, 20, 10, or 5. Whenever a price is picked, it cannot be picked again until everything has been selected. So, for example, say player 1 got there first. It starts at 20 coins, so you could set the next one at 30. Then player 2 could set it for 10, player 3 would be forced to set the next one to 5, and player 4 would have free reign to pick whatever they wanted. This is where the bulk of the player choice and strategy comes into play. Now, I hear ya. Why wouldn't you just always pick the most expensive option available to screw over the guy behind you? Well, you could do that, or you could try to collude with that person to screw over the person behind them who might be doing even better. You can do some wheeling and dealing. You can make plans. You can have plans go awry when someone manages to move way faster or slower than you thought, and all of a sudden Yoshi's catching a stray 30 corner that was meant for Hammer Bro, and your lifelong friendship is shattered. You know, the way Mario Party is meant to be played. And to cast one more stone into this pond, you can include a new item called the Bowser Phone. When you use it, Big Bow himself steps in to take over for his son? I think? Nephew? Who are the Koopalings? While Uncle Dad is in town, the next person who reaches the end will lose a star, or a bunch of coins if they don't have a star. Sometimes it's an all-out race to get to that cheap star like it's a Tickle Me Elmo in '96, and sometimes it's a battle against the ceaseless tides of time, drawing you closer to your inevitable demise. But it's not random chaos, it's chaos you have wrought yourself, which is the best kind. That's the central idea of the board. Sometimes you want to move quickly, sometimes you want to move slowly. Now we just need to come up with a few mechanics to facilitate that strategy, and we got ourselves a board. The easiest way to do this is with items. Obviously, something like a double dice block or triple dice block can help you move forward quickly, and we can also throw in a poison mushroom that subtracts from someone's roll. You could use it on someone who's about to get a cheap star, or you could use it on yourself if you're about to hit Bowser. There's layers here. But items are pretty obvious, so how's this for a more interesting mechanic? This board takes place in a train yard. Let's throw in some trains. At certain points on the track, you'll run into train cars that you have to go up and over. If you land on the happening space in the middle of the train, you can send it forward or back. Anyone on top of the train is carried with it, and anyone who is run over by the train loses half their coins. To take it one step further, let's throw in an item, Roy's Wand, that lets you pick one of the trains to move right then and there. This feature kills a few birds with one stone. You could move the train you're on ahead to get to the star faster. You could move someone else back. You could move someone else forward so they get the more expensive star and have to give you a cheap one. It also gives you ways to attack other players on the ground and hopefully keeps everyone's coins in check so you don't run into a scenario where everyone has 80 coins and the price is meaningless. And since the trains lie on top of the track, they can cover up spaces depending on where they stop, adding some variance to the board as the game progresses. That's a lot of dead birds. Now, for this to really work, you do need to limit the power of the wand item a bit. Once someone uses a wand to move a specific train, that train cannot be moved again until the end of that player's next turn. That way, if you send someone back, they can't just immediately bring themselves forward again, making the whole thing kind of useless. This mechanic solves a lot of our problems, but not all of them. There could still be plenty of turns where you don't have any items and you aren't close to the star. Without any branching paths, a lot of your turns will still consist of rolling, moving, and stopping without making a single choice. So, how do we fix this? Well, it's simple. Instead of having one path leading to the end, you have 3. This train yard will have 3 parallel tracks, all the exact same length, with set points where you can jump between them. Now, I know what you're thinking. Did I just make Subway servers? Screw it, we're committing. This way, you get the same race to the finish feeling of the other straight path boards, while also getting to make choices as to where you land. Is this cheating on the initial concept? Maybe, but I feel okay about it because they're not really branching paths. They all lead to the same place in the end. Alright, we got enough concepts down. It's time to get into the nitty-gritty of the design. The first job is to figure out how big this board should be. Now, I could look at other similar boards and just see what they used, but I think we're way too far into a Chiptide video without talking about math yet. I've designed the other boards assuming that this game uses the classic Mario Party 10-sided die. That means that on any given turn, you'll move an average of 5.5 spaces if you don't use any items. But that's not very realistic, so let's assume that you use some sort of movement item every 3 turns, and alternate between a double dice block and triple dice block. That means that over the course of 6 turns, you'll be moving an average of 5.5 spaces 4 times, 11 spaces once, and 16.5 spaces once. And we'll assume that someone uses a poison mushroom on you on one of those turns to subtract 3 from a roll. That works out to an average of 7.7 spaces per turn. I want it to take around 5 to 6 turns to reach the star, barring any train shenanigans, which means that we should have a total of 45 spaces per lane. Since you're moving an average of 5.5 spaces per turn, I decided to add a branch every 5 spaces on the middle track, staggered to opposite sides that let you switch to another track, regardless of which side you're on. That means that if you're in the middle, you're probably going to have at least one choice to make every single turn. On the outside, there's a bit less, but I think that adds to the strategy a bit. You might want to stay in the middle lane to give yourselves more options in the future. And so, Richard, good luck finding a way to fit it all on screen. Our final board will look something like this. These red rectangles represent the path of the trains. Each train car is 5 spaces long, just because it was easiest to fit them in between the gaps. And they come to rest on either end of the rectangle. I included 2 short ones that set you ahead or back about 1 turn, a medium one that's about 2, and a long one in the middle that's an average of 3 turns of progress. It also covers the most ground for running people over, adding some risk to the middle lane as well. That means that this board will have a total of 155 spaces, which is way higher than any of my other boards, but because of the way they're arranged, they're not all accessible, so it won't feel massive. In a previous video, I worked out this as the optimal distribution of space types, so let's get to work. I decided to put a lot of blue, helpful green, and Donkey Kong spaces on the spaces that the train cars will cover up. That way you have a good reason to want to move them, to prevent others from getting those good spaces. I also wanted to make sure that each track has around the same distribution of spaces, so one's not just objectively better than the others. We've all read our Robert Frost. We know that as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. That is a reference for my dad, and my dad only. I tried not to just throw the spaces out randomly. For instance, I tried to place some of the Bowser spaces shortly after branches so you can more easily target them to screw over other players, and others at the end of long stretches that you can't avoid for a little added chaos. Now, since this board is so big, we wound up having a total of 37 happening spaces that I need to come up with fun effects for. Some we've already talked about. The spaces on the tops of the trains move said trains. I also included a few spaces on the ground that work just like the wand item. You get to pick a train to move. The green spaces under where the trains might lie all get you free items, coins, or the opportunity to steal something from an opponent. There's a black market space where you can get some rarer items like the Bowser phone on the cheap, as opposed to stopping at the regular shops here. I thought it would be fun to throw in 3 happening spaces right at the end that let you spin Roy's Roulette. This is not the same as your typical chance spaces that let you switch coins and stars with other players. We've got a few of those elsewhere, but it is similar in concept. You spin a wheel and can double your money, potentially allowing you to afford a star that you otherwise couldn't, lose all your money, switch places with someone just inches away from the end, or even replace the star with Bowser and seal your own fate. And just for the yucks, I threw in another Roy's Roulette space right at the beginning. And finally, I imagine that when you reach the star at the end, you get to take a little side trolley back to the beginning to start again. So, what if a few happening spaces let you throw something onto the return tracks that the next person who reaches the star will have to hit? It could be coins for them to pick up, or traps to make them lose coins and items. And they keep piling up until someone hits them. If you can't afford a star or choose not to buy one, maybe you're shot back in a cannon or something to avoid all of it. If you think you're gonna reach the star first, you could set yourself up with a bunch of free coins, or screw someone else over if you're miles away. In some rare cases, you might actually have a reason to say no to a star if you know you're gonna get absolutely shredded by traps on your way back, which could be interesting. But that still leaves us with 4 happening spaces unaccounted for. I'll be honest, I was a little out of ideas at this point, so I decided to outsource it to all of you. I made a post asking for some ideas in my community tab, which you can see if you just subscribe to the channel. Hey, you did make it this far into the video after all. I bet you'd like it. And let me tell you, you all came up with some great ideas, like Sprite Suit, who suggests that one of the trains is attacked by bandit cowboys, and you have to try to defend it with fire flowers in a little shootout minigame, which absolutely slaps. I also like ODI Seth, who suggested you can play a game of cards with the train conductors, or Cam the Galaxy's suggestion of making you do the trolley problem. Do you let a train run over 5 toads, or switch the tracks so it only hits one? Either way, you win nothing but a lifetime of trauma. And there you have it. Roy's Radical Railway. My take on the straight line board. What do you think? Do you like it? Do you have any other ideas or things you would change? Let me know in the comments down below. We've still got 2 Koopalings left to go, so subscribe if you want to see those boards as soon as they come out. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to start thinking of some L words. Laboratory, laundromat, louse, lamp, lake, lobby. Well, folks, it's official. I have run out of clever bits to start these videos. Today, I'm trying to create the most interesting Mario Party board that I possibly can. This is part 6 in an ongoing series to make the perfect Mario Party game. You don't have to watch the rest before watching this one, but you can watch them all after this if you haven't seen them already. That's it. That's the cold open. Richard, don't waste these good people's time any longer, and hit that intro. One of my favorite things to do on this channel is tricking people into learning about math and science. Oh, come on in! It's just some Pokemon trivia, nothing to be worried about. Psych! Now you know how base 2 counting systems work. Y'all wanted some cool Minecraft videos? Well, how about some physics instead? You thought that I actually cared about solving FNAF and wasn't just trying to teach you about genetic engineering? Fools! And that gave me an idea. What if I did that same thing in a Mario Party board? What if I designed every single mechanic and detail to be a subtle reference to, oh, I don't know, chemistry, without anybody realizing? Kids would think it's just another fun and quirky board from their favorite game until 10 years later, when they're ratatouilleing in the back of the classroom the first time their teacher mentions covalent bonds, realizing they've known this all along. So that's going to be the basic theme for this board, but we still need one more thing. Something else I like to do in these Mario Party videos is take one mechanic of the game and try to expand it as much as possible. We've done random generation, coins, movement, and today I wanted to focus on items. Items have appeared in every single Mario Party game in one form or another. So how do we take them to the next level? Well, it's simple. We throw them out the window. I want this board to have a science theme, so what about this? Instead of picking up regular items for you to use, you find item pieces that you can mix and match like a true mad scientist to create all sorts of wonderful and terrible abominations. Of course, we can't just let players mix and match any pieces they want. That would be way too powerful, and I'll say it, just plain boring. There has to be some set of rules that govern and restrict which pieces can go together, and it has to be easily understood by the players. Now, I could try to create a system like this from scratch, or I could just steal it from a little thing called reality. Get ready for a lightning-fast science lesson. Everything in our world is made up of atoms, tiny little bundles of charged particles. You've got protons, which are positively charged, electrons, which are negatively charged, and sometimes you got some neutrons thrown in there with no charge. The number of protons in an atom determines what element it is. So if it's only got 1 proton, it's hydrogen. If it's got 8, it's oxygen. If it's got 79, it's gold. Think of atoms kinda like Legos. On their own, they're not all that impressive. But if you start putting them together, you can make some dope ninja hideouts and submarines and awesome underground drills. And can you tell that I grew up in the early 2000s? In the same way that Legos use studs to stick together, atoms use electrons. However, unlike Legos, not all atoms can fit together. If you look at the structure of an atom, you'll see that all of the protons and neutrons are grouped together in the middle, called the nucleus. The electrons orbit around that nucleus in distinct shells or layers. In their base form, they will always have the same number of protons and electrons, so the charges cancel out. As it turns out, each of these shells can only hold 8 electrons. Usually. The first shell can only hold 2, and things get a little wonky with the transition metals, but for now, as a general rule of thumb, 8 electrons per shell. Once a shell is filled, you move up to the next one. And these electrons in the outermost unfilled shell are your studs. We call them valence electrons, and they determine what atoms can fit together. When forming bonds, atoms are trying to fill out their outer electron shells so they can hit that magic 8. So, for example, chlorine has an atomic number of 17. That means that it has 17 electrons. The first shell can hold 2 electrons, the second can hold 8, so that leaves 7 in the third shell, one short of being full. So, if it finds an atom with only 1 valence electron, like, say, sodium, it can snatch that electron up to fill out its set, creating some sodium chloride, also known as salt. Atoms can bond together in a few different ways. Ionic bonds are like what I just described, when one atom steals the electrons from another, like a bully looking for some lunch money. Except in this case, the kid getting bullied is like, yeah, you know what? That lunch money was slowing me down anyway. Go ahead, take it. Take it all. And the bully's like, whoa, dude, I don't need that much lunch money. And the kid is like, take it. Take the lunch money. Do it, coward. Do it. Then there are covalent bonds, the far less toxic version, where atoms realize they could just share some electrons to make everyone happy. For example, oxygen has 6 valence electrons, meaning it needs 2 more to fill out that shell. Hydrogen only has 1 electron in its first shell, meaning it also only needs 1 more. So if the hydrogen both share their electron with oxygen, and oxygen shares an electron with each of the hydrogen, suddenly they're all full up. And just like that, you have the recipe for water. And world peace, I'm pretty sure? I mean, it doesn't actually sound that complicated. So what does any of this have to do with Mario Party? Well, I want the items in this board to follow this exact same system. Throughout the game, you'll pick up item pieces with different effects. Each one will have little nodes on the outside, and you can combine them in any way you want, so long as they end up with 8 nodes at the end. For example, you might find a die piece with 6 nodes. Pair it with another one by sharing 2 pairs of nodes, and you can create a double dice block. Mix 3 together, and you could have a triple dice block. You can carry up to 5 of these pieces at any time, and at the start of each of your turns, you can combine any you have into an item to be used right then and there. Now, admittedly, this system could risk becoming very complicated, potentially overpowered, and a bit time-consuming, so let's simplify it just a bit. First, let's say that item pieces can only have an even number of nodes, so 2, 4, or 6. Just makes things a little less overwhelming and easier to keep track of. Also, let's say that you can only combine up to 3 pieces at once. Sorry gang, you can't make some insane hydrocarbon that lets you move 50 spaces in a single turn. And just to keep the game moving, maybe the game can simply show you all the combinations that you could currently make, as well as any that you are one item piece away from, so you know what you can work towards, and you don't have to meticulously try every single combination at the start of every single turn. The cool thing about this system is that we don't really need to work that hard to make something that feels super deep. We can just come up with a handful of pieces of varying sizes, and they will naturally be able to combine into exponentially more items. For example, you could combine a dice piece with another dice piece to get a double dice block, or you could combine it with a 2-node coin piece where you roll one die and destroy some coins from any player you pass. Here's just a few ideas that I had for pieces, but let me know if you have any more in the comments down below. I imagine that the 2-node pieces are quite common, and they can allow you to do things like destroy coins or steal item pieces. The 4-node pieces are a bit more powerful since they can be combined with a lot of different things. Maybe they could enable things like stealing coins rather than just destroying them, or allowing you to target specific players with your effects. And the 6 nodes include rolling extra dice, which is obviously pretty powerful, and as a fun little game within the game, you can include a rare mystery piece. On its own, it doesn't do anything, but if you manage to combine 3 of them together, you can swap all your stars with another player, as a fun little reference to Mario Party 5. Because you need several pieces to actually use an item, I think they should be a bit more common than your typical items. You can easily pick up random ones for free on the board, and you can purchase them in bulk from the Monty Mole shops for relatively cheap. Now I hear you. Monty Mole? What is this slander? What happened to the purple toad shops that have become an institution in these boards? And folks, don't worry, I get it. Nobody loves Toad more than me, but I promise it'll be worth it. Because it's a pun! See, in chemistry, a mole is a unit of measurement that quantifies the amount of a substance that you have. It's equal to this many particles of a given substance, and it's useful for finding relative masses and concentrations. And Monty is also, now stay with me, it's kind of complicated here, a mole. So that's the main gimmick of the board. You have to collect the right item pieces and figure out how to combine them to give you the best items possible. Do you use those 2 dice pieces now to get a double, or do you try to hold out a little bit longer for a triple? Other than that, it's a pretty standard Mario Party board where your goal is to collect as many stars as possible. And so, after all of that, I give you Ludwig's Lethal Laboratory. This is your basic style of Mario Party boards. No crazy moving parts, no complicated random generation. Just a simple series of loops, find the star, pay 20 coins, and it jumps to a new space. And obviously, it is set in a crazy mad science laboratory like something straight out of the boring section of a Resident Evil game. Now, I could have just laid out the spaces in a basic loop pattern like I did with the first board, but remember, I want every aspect of this board to be a subtle chemistry reference that kids won't fully appreciate for another 5 to 10 years. So, I made it shaped like the periodic table. Now, look, is this thing a conducive shape for a Mario Party board? No. Did it take me a long time to come up with an interesting route with multiple branching paths and no dead ends like I was solving the world's most complicated Ho and Jim puzzle? Yes. But am I going to let that stop me? Absolutely not. Juan, I am coming for you. Players start up here by hydrogen, because of course they do, and can travel around through various loops on the board following the white arrows. I'll admit, this space up here is a little bit tricky, especially with hydrogen and helium hanging out all on their lonesome. So I decided that this top area can be the laboratory's pit of toxic goo. Because every good mad science laboratory needs a pit of toxic goo. There will be little docks here where you can get on a boat and get off at any of these locations, just to connect things up a bit more and give you some more options. Other than that, there's nothing too crazy going on here. I threw in 2 Bowser spaces and 1 DK space where you spin a wheel and something good or bad happens to you, and a couple of red spaces evenly distributed according to the ideal distribution from the first video. Now, we just need to come up with some fun effects for all the green spaces. Of course, you got your classics. These here will get you 2 to 3 random item pieces. These 2 here will transmute a few of your item pieces into new ones. And these will let you play little micro games to try and win some coins or items or something. I thought it might be fun if they were themed around the element that space corresponds to. So, for example, this one here is where gold would be, so you just get a crap ton of gold coins. This one here corresponds with gallium, a super cool element that can melt in your hand. Maybe you have to try and cast it into like a coin shape and you get more depending on how well you do. And this one is silicon, which can do all sorts of things and is even theorized to be a potential building block for alien life forms. So I don't know, maybe you get like kidnapped by aliens or something and warped to a random spot on the map. These 2 down here will each warp you to a secret area that corresponds to, you know, those 2 rows in the periodic table that they always chuck at the bottom so they can easily fit it all into one page. The top one takes you to a special area filled with blue spaces and a free star at the end. Kind of like the lucky spaces for Mario Party 8. Because it wouldn't be a chip-type video without at least one reference to Mario Party 8. Again, can you tell I grew up in the early 2000s? The very bottom row tends to be where you find a lot of radioactive elements. So I thought it might be fun if this row contains nothing but pure chaos. Every single space contains a wheel. You spin it and something completely random happens to you. And the further you move down the track towards the more radioactive elements, the more random and extreme the effects become, from gaining and losing coins to gaining and losing whole stars. Now, is it potentially problematic to teach kids that playing with radioactive elements might get them cool free stuff? No, I don't think so. Of course, we have to throw a few chance time spaces in there. It wouldn't be a Mario Party game without them. And for the last few, I had another fun little chemistry idea. Oftentimes when you see a periodic table, you'll see it split into color-coded blocks. Elements in the same block will usually have similar properties and bond in similar ways. So, this whole board will also be split into those same blocks, denoted by the color of the floor. Anytime someone lands on one of these spaces, they will spin a wheel with all the colors on it. Then, a specific effect will occur to anyone currently in the block that it landed on, based on the properties of that block. Elements in these first 2 columns, known as the alkali and alkaline earth metals, are highly reactive because they only have 1 to 2 valence electrons that they desperately want to offload. So, if it lands on red, anyone in that area will have one of their item pieces fused with a random other one, creating an item that will automatically be used on their next turn. The transition metals down here are highly electrically conductive due to the way that they bond. So if it lands on blue, anyone in this zone will be zapped and lose half their coins. The post-transition metals all tend to be very soft and malleable. Maybe here your die becomes all sludgy and your movement is halved on your next turn. The metalloids are kinda wishy-washy. Sometimes they act like metals, sometimes they don't. So here, you flip a coin and gain or lose money at random. The reactive non-metals are hungry for electrons. They love to just steal things. So if it lands on yellow, anyone not in that area loses half their coins. And that whole pot is divided up amongst the people in the yellow. The lanthanides and actinides at the bottom are kind of all over the place, I'll be honest. I couldn't think of a great thematic effect for this one, so, I don't know, you just get some free random item pieces, I don't know. The elements here have unknown properties because they don't really exist in nature, so maybe it just randomly picks one of the other effects. And lastly, we have the noble gases, which are pretty special. They already have completely full outer electron shells, so they are completely non-reactive. This is a safe zone. If it lands on orange, nothing happens. This wheel can be spun on any of these happening spaces, or if you manage to craft the Ludwig's Wand item, you can select a zone and trigger its effect whenever you want. And there you have it, Ludwig's Lethal Laboratory. True, it is a bit simplistic in its layout, but hopefully the creativity and multitude of possibilities of the item combinations will lead to endless shenanigans, cool moves, and broken friendships. And just like that, we've got 6 of the 7 boards down. We've come this far without a problem, and I'm sure Lemmy's board won't give me any trouble at all. Folks, it's been a long journey, but we've finally come to the end of the road. 7 months ago, I embarked on a journey to create a statistically perfect Mario Party game, where each and every board was meticulously designed and optimized with mathematical rigor to be as fun as possible. We've covered all sorts of ground, from the importance of player choice to the mechanics of random generation and properly balancing an economy. But today, for this 7th and final board, I don't have a crazy gimmick. I'm not rewriting the laws of Mario Party itself. No, I think that I've earned a little victory lap. A week to take it easy, throw together all the stuff that we've learned, and make one last pretty great board. That is what I would say if I were a coward. Today, I want to talk about Mario Party 9 and 10, also known as the car games. In these, there are no player choices, there are no strategic opportunities, there is only the car. Fans collectively panned this design philosophy when it was first introduced in Mario Party 9. They wailed in despair when it was brought back in 10, and they sang songs of their rejoice when it was done away with in Super. Ding dong, the car is dead. And I think I can fix it. You may call it hubris. You can warn me of Icarus and his fateful flight towards that great celestial body. But here's the thing. Just don't make your wings out of wax, and you'll be fine. Today, I am creating the statistically best Mario Party car board. And perhaps the best board, period. Richard, hit that intro. So, before we can start creating the perfect car-style board, we first need to understand why they failed to work in the first place. For those who have never played Mario Party 9 and 10, first of all, probably a good call. But as panned as these games often are for breaking too far from the established formula, they do share some things in common with the Mario Party games of old. You roll dice to move spaces, you occasionally play minigames, and well, actually that's about it. Unlike most Mario Party games where everyone has the ability to move around the board as they please, here everyone is stuck in a car together. If I roll a 4, everybody's going 4. If Richard wants to go left, everybody's going left. Idiot! That was our exit right there, dude. Now we're gonna have... Now, because everyone moves together as a unit, you can't do the usual race to the star thing. Everyone would just always reach it at the exact same time. Instead, these boards tend to be long, straight lines with the occasional branching path. Scattered along these boards are little mini stars for you to pick up. If you're in the driver's seat when you pass some mini stars, you pick them up. And there are some points where you all compete in a mini game to get a bunch of mini stars, and whoever has the most by the time you reach the end is the winner. Because mini stars can be picked up for free, there's no need for coins in this game. And since there are no coins, there's no need to play mini games in between every turn. Instead, you only play mini games when you land on specific spaces. And that's kind of a shame, because there are some really great mini games in here. You just don't get to play them that often. Now, if you've watched the rest of this series, you may have already started to pick up on some of the problems with this style of board. And that is the complete removal of player agency. You don't get to pick where you go, you don't get to plan ahead, you're basically just at the mercy of everybody's rolls and have to cross your fingers that you happen to be in the driver's seat when you pass some mini stars. It's pretty much all luck, and they don't even really try to hide it. Now, a lot of people would probably say that this formula was doomed from the start, and they were fools to even try it. But I don't think that's necessarily true. There is potentially a lot of fun to be had here if you get the balance right. The way that they executed it, yes, isn't that fun. But a competitive game where players are forced to cooperate in some way, now that is potentially interesting. Riddle me this. What is the most impactful, cutthroat, and hilarious thing you can do in Mario Party? To me, the answer is obvious. 2v2 minigame. Your partner only needs a few more coins to be able to afford that star right in front of them. If you win that minigame, you get some coins, and your partner gets that star that they worked so hard for. Or you could throw the minigame, sacrifice your own coins, and drag your partner kicking and screaming down with you. Moments like this provide the ultimate strategic opportunity. If you want to help yourself, you also have to help everybody else, which makes the games way more fun, and also, it's hilarious! So my pitch for this board is that one glorious, friendship-shattering, memory-cementing moment for the entire game. So, how do we pull this off? Well, here's the general premise. As opposed to the other boards in this series, which had one consistent setting and theme, this one is a road trip. Players travel together in one car, with each player getting a turn in the driver's seat, just like the main game. Feels like kind of cheating if I didn't use that part. As you travel down this road, you will occasionally come across forks in the road, and whoever is driving at that moment will get to pick which way everybody goes. And I'm not talking those tiny little splits from 9 and 10, where you pick a way, get about halfway down yourself, and then the next guy just gets to the point where they come back together, so none of it really mattered anyway. No, the branches in this board never come back together. You start on a simple, straight road, which eventually comes to a branch. At the end of each of those branches is another branch, and at the end of those is another branch, creating this sprawling tree of different paths. And to ensure that each of these choices actually matters, each of these branches or legs can have its own character and visual theme. You could go left and drive through the safe, peaceful plains where everybody's gonna have a good time. Or you could turn right into the flaming volcano of doom, filled with nothing but pure, distilled pain, a sea of red spaces and despair. Sure, it's gonna be a bad time for you, but it's also gonna be a bad time for everyone else. This design accomplishes a bunch of things at once. First of all, it ensures that your decisions matter. If someone really wants to go left, you could screw them over and just go right. And now, everybody has to deal with your mistakes. There's no going back, there's no do-overs. Your only hope is to beg and bargain with whoever happens to be driving to take you down the road you want. And it also hits on another factor we've talked about in past videos, replayability. Sure, the board itself is the same every time, but you can always pick a new route and travel to a new area you've never been before. It creates this sprawling adventure where you have to play again and again and again to see what's around every corner. But there's still one big problem to solve with this board. How do you win? Well, big shocker, I'm throwing out the mini-stars. They rely way too heavily on luck, which in practice isn't all that fun. So we're bringing back the classic coins and stars. You still collect coins from landing on blue spaces, and you still play mini-games in between every round. However, we're going to have to make a few changes to stars to ensure that they work in this format. So how about this? Instead of the star being on a specific space on the board or at the end of the track, there are certain checkpoints along the way. Maybe 2 to 4, depending on how long of a game you choose to play. When the car reaches one of these checkpoints, everybody gets a chance to buy stars. It doesn't matter who the driver is. And to avoid a bunch of ties where everybody just buys a star at every checkpoint, let's say that you can buy up to 3 at a time if you can afford them. And as a fun little twist to pay homage to the battle minigames from 9 and 10, which were pretty fun, whenever you reach one of these checkpoints, you all partake in a special battle minigame, and your placement in said minigame determines the price you have to pay per star. So the person in first can buy a star for 10, second has to pay 15, then 20, and 25. This happens at each checkpoint, which you'll always cross no matter what lane you pick. And whoever has the most stars when you reach the end is the winner. In broad strokes, it's not too different from 9 and 10, but I think the little details are where this board will really shine. And so, I give you all Lemmy's Looney Lanes. Because he's the only one left. The first thing we need to figure out is how big this board should be. So, let's do a little math. In a previous video, we found that you will move an average of 8.12 spaces per turn, factoring in the occasional items. Since all players are moving together, that means that the car will move 32.48 spaces around. Now, I want to make sure that these lanes are long enough that you don't just blow past the whole thing. I want to make my friends really sit with my bad choices for a while. And I also want to make sure that different people get to make the choice each time. So let's say that each leg should take an average of 3.75 full rounds to get through. That way, you'll probably hit a fork at a different point in the rotation each time. At 32.48 spaces per round, that means that each lane should have around 121 spaces. And now, that is a bit long to just go in a straight line, so maybe within these larger branches, you can have the little splits that quickly come back together. These don't need to have massive game-altering effects, they're more about spicing up your individual turn. Now, obviously, since the game only ends when you reach the end, you can't set a distinct turn turn limit like with the other boards. But we still want a way to adjust the length of the game, so here, instead of choosing a number of turns, you choose a number of legs. For shorter games, you can stop after 3 legs, which will probably equate to around 10 to 12 turns. Pretty short. If you want a longer game, you could go up to 5 legs for closer to a 20-turn game. Honestly, still a bit shorter than I wanted, but the problem with adding more and more legs is that the number of required unique endpoints gets exponentially higher. Yeah, I'd love to sit here and say that Nintendo should let us go on a cross-country 9-leg drive and create 256 unique paths all for a single board, but that feels a little unrealistic. To compensate, instead we can make legs 4 and 5 a bit longer than the previous ones, so a 4-leg game would take an average of 20 turns, and a 5-leg game would take 25 to 30. Now, normally, this is the part of the video where I would go through space by space, figuring out exactly what each one should be. At 5 legs long, that is a total of 31 unique paths, each with a minimum of 121 spaces for a total of 3,751 spaces that I would have to figure out. I'm not doing that. So instead, I'll just go through the flavors and ideas that I had for some of these paths, as well as some fun events you could include. And to the dozen or so people who have already asked if they could make their own party game using my board designs with enough changes to not get sued into oblivion by Nintendo, I'll leave the rest to you. So for example, you could start in a basic plains area, your classic 1-1 inspired area with nothing crazy going on. Then you can run through the gamut of Mario themes. A desert section with lots of hazards that harm the group, but also opportunities for free dice blocks as you speed down empty roads. A snow area where you could slide off the track and force everyone to chip in for a towing service. A water zone where your car turns into a duck boat and you have to work together to fend off pirates. Stuff like that. And now with 31 paths, you'd need a lot more themes than this, but you could also get away with repeating some as long as you don't put them in a single line. But feel free to leave your own suggestions down below. Remember, we want events that require some level of cooperation, so you have a golden opportunity to be as uncooperative as possible. Another fun idea I had to incentivize choosing one path over another is by making them affect the bonus stars. Normally, at the end of every Mario Party game, 3 random bonus stars are selected and awarded to players based on certain criteria. Maybe this time, instead of being random, they can be tied to the path that you took. So if you went left at the first fork, the happening star is locked in, but if you go right, you'll get the minigame star instead. And players will be able to see all the stars at each branch at the start of the game. So maybe you decide at the beginning that you want to gun it for the running star all the way to the left and try and use as many dice blocks as you can. Or if you know that the minigame star is down the road to the left and your buddy is absolutely cracked at minigames, you could just go to the right. Just to add yet another layer of strategy and the opportunity to impact other players. Item shops should work similarly to the stars in that when you pass them, everybody gets a chance to get out and go buy stuff. Stretch your legs, get some snacks, use the bathroom, classic road stop activities. Items that allow you to change your dice are obviously the most interesting because they affect everyone. But you also have an opportunity to add in unique items that would only work in this format, like a Mario Kart banana. Place it on a space ahead of you, and whoever's driving when you pass it loses a bunch of coins. Just hope that they don't all band together to move as slow as possible and make you fall on your own sword. As for happening spaces, I think there are loads of opportunities for fun, road trip inspired events. Maybe the driver has to get out and pay for gas, maybe you get a flat tire and everyone has to sacrifice an item as they get out to go push, stuff like that, with a good mix of things that affect just the driver and things that affect everyone, so you can all yell and scream at someone for something that wasn't their fault at all. And if you want to lean more into the competitive cooperation aspect, I had a fun idea for a little game inspired by the famous Prisoner's Dilemma called Lemmy's Lottery. If you land on certain happening spaces scattered liberally across the board, Lemmy will pop out and offer everyone a choice between two things themed after the area that you're in. So maybe if you're on a beach, he'll offer a coconut or a mango. And everyone simply has to pick one of them in secret. If everyone picks the same object, you all get 10 coins. If you pick one object and everyone else picks another, the one person gets 30 coins. If the votes are split 2 and 2, everybody loses 10 coins. Simple as that. Now, you can have as much time as you want to discuss amongst yourselves and all agree, okay, we're all picking mango to get the coins. Got it? Everyone got it? Okay. Well, here's the thing. If you just switch to the coconut and let all those chumps go with the plan, you could make some bank. You just gotta hope that I don't have the same idea and we all lose. Or, God forbid, you, me, and Richard all try to pull one over on each other and Hammer Bro ends up walking away with fat stacks for being the only honest dude in the bunch. You greedy bastards, look what you did. I can't judge, I'm in there too. And there you have it. With just a few simple changes, we have turned the hated car board into something completely unique, cutthroat, and hopefully incredibly fun. Yes, everyone has to move together, but we haven't entirely removed player agency. And in fact, since every choice you make will impact every other player for the rest of the game, your choices actually matter more than usual, and people will hopefully be more invested in the game, even when it's not their turn. And, just like that, we've reached the end of our series. One board for each of the 7 Koopalings, each as statistically perfect as the last. Nintendo, your move. Oh, what is this? Oh my god, is this a post-credit scene with a twist that has been so subtly and expertly teased throughout the whole series? Oh my god.
In that magic 8, I forgot to include any more clues.
I'll see you all next week for the finale of the statistically best Mario Party game. Richard, let's get ready to Dude, I told you the exit was to our left. Where you go? You've finally done it. You've played all 7 boards. You've conquered each and every Koopaling. You've even completed that weird side mode that they always include that, you know, I guess is pretty fun, but also feels a little unnecessary. Like, I'm actually good on bad Mario Kart, you know? You've done it all. Or have you? In a twist that absolutely nobody saw coming, because they definitely don't do it in every single Mario game, there was another hidden level to this game. One far more devious and challenging than any that came before. See, every party needs a crasher. And Bowser just so happens to be in town. Today, in the actual finale of my perfect Mario Party board series, I am putting everything I learned to the test. I'm busting out the dingbat principles one last time and creating the last perfect Mario Party board. Richard, hit that intro. It's tradition at this point to include a hidden Bowser-themed board at the end of every Mario Party game, designed for the more experienced players looking for more refined ways to end their friendships. So I'm sure you've all been eagerly waiting to see what devious, downright cruel board I've cooked up today. I mean, some of my past boards have already been pushing the limits. The only logical next step is to statistically dismantle the Geneva Conventions and create something that would make Jigsaw look like the Care Bears. And folks, I must say, I am sorry to disappoint. See, while I have crafted a Bowser-themed board for you today, I must confess, it does not include a single trap. There's not an unfair level of red spaces, a mathematical derivation of chaos theory, or a full recreation of Dante's Inferno. It's just a totally normal board. Sure, it's got Bowser's name on it, but why must Bowser always be the bad guy? Why does Bowser always have to be the one to sever your friendships instead of bringing people together? As the famous saying goes, Koopas just want to have fun. And so I figured, hey, the game's called Mario Party, why not let Bowser throw a party of his own? The final board in my statistically perfect Mario Party game is Bowser's Big Bad Barbecue. But bad like 80s bad, so it's actually good, trust me. After 40 years of fighting, Bowser has decided that it's finally time to bury the hatchet. He's throwing a little party in his backyard, and you're all invited. And not as the entertainment, not as part of the menu, as friends. Everyone's here to hang out, eat some food, play some games, and have a good time. It's a classic game of Mario Party as everyone travels around trying to buy as many stars as possible. Simple as that. Now, of course, Bowser is a generous host. He wants everyone to enjoy themselves, but he does have a few, house rules that you should be aware of. In past videos in this series, we've talked about the importance of having a game within the game in a Mario Party board. Some secondary goal or restriction that changes up the way you play and keeps each board feeling fresh. And so for this board, at the start of every game, Bowser will give you a few random house rules that all players must follow. Things like, hey, you know what, I would really appreciate it if people didn't run in my house, so don't use any dice block items. Or you know, it's kind of impolite to win more than one minigame in a row, wouldn't you say? Let everyone else have a turn. At the start of every game, you will randomly get 3 of these house rules. And every 5 turns, Bowser will randomly select a player, and they get to pick another house rule to add to the list that everybody, including them, must follow. So as the game goes on, you'll keep adding on more and more restrictions, constantly changing the way that you have to play. Now, I hear ya. Isn't the Bowser board supposed to be super chaotic? What's chaotic about adding a bunch of rules? And I do hear you, but here's the thing. You could just break those rules. There's nothing in the game that prevents you from using a double dice block or winning every single minigame. But if you do choose to break a rule, it's gonna earn you some bad karma with Bowser. Literally, every time you break a rule, you gain a point of karma. And if you get enough karma, Bowser will be forced to take matters into his own hands and start interfering with the game. Oh, you rolled a 10? Oops, looks like Bowser bumped into your die by accident and changed it to a 1. Oh, my bad, man, my bad. Oh, you landed on a blue space? Actually, no, I'm pretty sure that one's red now. Tough luck. And that is the delicate game that you have to play on this board. You can always choose to break one of the house rules to try and get ahead or give yourself an advantage. But doing so will cost you in the long run. Because once you get a point of karma, it's impossible to get rid of it. Bowser doesn't forgive, and he doesn't forget. The more karma you accumulate, the greater the odds that Bowser will mess with you. And if you somehow manage to get to the last 5 turns without a single point of karma, which will require a lot of restraint and a fair bit of luck, maybe Bowser will start helping you cheat by giving you free coins or helping you roll high or even aiding you in minigames. This is where the signature chaos of a Bowser board comes from, as people start throwing the rules out the window to get every unfair advantage they can, or scratching and clawing to maintain their reputation as everyone else tries to tear them down. Not only does this add a game within the game and a new level of strategy, it also adds a lot of replayability with new rules each time you play, and interaction between players as everyone starts adding in new rules to mess with each other. To make this system really work, you need a whole bunch of house rules that affect everything the game can track, from items to spaces to minigames, so you can keep getting new and interesting ones each time you play. So let me know any fun ideas for possible house rules that you have in the comments down below. Now, all we need is a board to complement this system. And now I could have taken a page out of the other Bowser levels books and packed it with traps and bad events. But at the end of the day, is there anything really chaotic about a bunch of red spaces? At a certain point, the misfortune becomes predictable and loses its bite. But there is one trap more cruel and chaotic than any I could cook up. Humanity. Instead of filling it with spaces that cause bad things to happen to you, I filled it with ways that you can make bad things happen to everyone else. Remember when I said you weren't invited as the entertainment? Well, there ain't no house rule against lying. So, using the same exact formula from the very first episode, I generated this board, with a 48 space loop going around the outside and branching paths in the middle, perfectly balanced, as all things should be. To stay with the barbecue theme, this board is split into different areas that would all fit in a backyard party. You've got the house, a pool, the big grill, a gladiatorial coliseum where you duel your compatriots to the death, and a nice big yard filled with fun lawn games. Players will start at the gate in the bottom right corner. Making your way north, you will quickly come to the Coliseum, being run by Bowser Jr. Every single space in here lets you initiate either a 1v1 duel minigame against a player of your choice, or a 4-way battle minigame against every other player for coins or stars to the victor. The path is split, and these spaces alternate between 1v1 and 4v4. So, assuming you don't roll so high that you blow past the whole thing, you will always be able to pick which type of minigame you want. Now, that is potentially a lot of extra minigames if everyone goes in here, which could drag the game out a little too much. But remember, This board is all about letting players break the rules if they want. So if someone challenges you to a duel, but you'd rather hang on to that star, actually, thank you very much, you could just say no. Of course, you should know that Bowser has a strict no coward policy in his house. So for every duel you refuse, you will get 2 points of karma. Choose your battles carefully. If you continue north, you'll pass the first Toad shop, who, in addition to his usual stock of items, will always sell the dueling glove item. Basically, the equivalent of the Duelo candy from Mario Party 8, where you roll 2 dice and duel the first person you see. Now, I don't want a situation where someone literally never puts their stars on the line, karma be damned. So I think duels initiated with the item should be unavoidable. In the same way that if someone calls you up and challenges you to a fight, you could just not show up. But if someone rocks up to you and says, "We're fighting right now," you're fighting. You're getting jumped is what I'm trying to say. You'll also pass the first of 4 Bowser spaces where he'll force you to play some micro game and you can get a bunch of bad karma and lose coins or a star if you don't do good enough. Bowser has a strict no loser policy too. After that, you'll come across the grill, where Bowser's cooking up some burgers and dogs for everyone. At the start of the game, he's still waiting for it to heat up, so it's mostly blue. However, as the game goes on and it gets hotter, the spaces slowly start turning red. And if you land on this green space right before, Bowser will blast it with heat and turn everything on the grill red for a few turns. So don't land there. Continuing along the top, you'll pass the first of 3 chance time spaces, because you know every good board's gotta have a chance time space, as well as the one and only DK space. Donkey Kong wasn't invited to the party, but you can find him peeking over the fence to slip you a free star. South of that is Bowser's Pool, complete with another Toad shop themed after a poolside bar. And Bowser would like to reassure you that Toad is here completely of his own volition. He hasn't been kidnapped and is being held as an indentured servant to make sure that the party goes off smoothly. Thank you very much. There's also a happening space here to crank up the heat in the pool and get everyone who's in it a few free coins. Unless, of course, there's someone in there with real bad karma, in which case Bowser might accidentally crank up the heat a little too high and boil everyone inside alive, making them lose half their coins. What are you gonna do? If you keep going down, you'll enter the house, which has a few chance spaces, one of 2 King Boos, who you can pay to steal money or stars from other players, and a happening space that lets you loot Bowser's fridge for some free items, at the cost of some karma, of course. Bowser has a strict no looting policy. I also had a fun little idea for the kitchen. If you pass this area, one of the Koopalings will take your order and throw a piece of meat on the grill for you, and give you a window of turns you have to get there before it's done. Maybe something like 3 to 4 turns. If you can get back up to the grill in that window, Bowser will give you your meat and you get a bunch of free coins. If you're too early or too late, it's either raw or overcooked, and you get nothing. Now, of course, if someone else makes it to the grill in that window before you, they could always pretend that they were the ones who ordered that cheeseburger and steal your reward from you. At the cost of some karma, of course. What did he say? No looting. Read the sign. And lastly, we have the yard in the middle, with some interconnected paths to make getting around a bit easier. All the happening spaces out here let you play some classic yard games against the various Koopalings to try and get some free coins and items. You could play Wiffle Ball with Wendy, Can Jam with Lemmy and Ludwig, join Iggy on the putting green, some pool volleyball against Larry, and I hear Roy plays a mean cornhole. And of course, each of these games gives you the opportunity to cheat. if you don't mind the consequences. And there you have it. Bowser's Big Bad Barbecue. I know some of you might be disappointed that it's not some insane torture device that would make the Spencer Mansion look like Candyland, but it all goes back to one of the core tenets from the very first video. Pure random chaos can be fun, but it's far more fun to wield that chaos like a weapon and inflict it upon each other. With lots of ways to duel your opponents and optional house rules to change the way you think about the game, I think this board will provide way more chaos than 50 red spaces ever could. But what do you think? Do you like this board? And now that you've seen them all, which one's your favorite? And for everyone who's followed this entire series, thank you so much. I had a ton of fun making all of these and reading all your suggestions and ideas in the comments. And if there's any other games that you'd like to see me try to statistically improve, let me know. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go challenge Richard to a duel. Oh, no, there's no saying no. Oh! And of course, a massive thank you to all my supporters on Patreon, including Alex, Alakazam, Big Dog Ty for to win, Captain Kirby, Sidian, Sherry and Mark, Stylish, The Boss Killer 94, Ty Studio, and Moki Ubu.